The past is a shadow that haunts us, its secrets buried beneath layers of time, waiting to be unearthed. In every forgotten corner of history, there are stories that defy explanation. Mysteries so chilling, so baffling, they refuse to fade into the darkness. What happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Who were the men behind the cryptic Voynich manuscript? And why does the world's most powerful civilizations still hold on to their darkest, most elusive truths? For the next 3 hours, we'll dive deep into these enigmas, into the unknown. But be warned, some mysteries are better left unsolved. In the heart of modern-day Turkey, beneath a dry, sun-beaten landscape, lies a site that challenges everything we think we know about human civilization. Çatalhöyük, a sprawling ancient settlement that dates back to 7,500 BC, is more than just a remnant of a forgotten world. It's a window into the mysterious origins of humanity. With its labyrinthine streets, tightly clustered houses, and vivid murals, Çatalhöyük remains one of the most enigmatic archaeological sites ever discovered. The site itself is extraordinary. The buildings, made of mud brick and arranged in a honeycomb-like pattern, were so tightly packed that there were no streets or pathways between them. Instead, residents accessed their homes by climbing ladders to enter through the roofs. This unusual design raises immediate questions. Why were the people of Çatalhöyük so protective of their private spaces? Was it a defense mechanism, a way of fortifying their homes against threats, or something deeper, something symbolic? As archaeologists have uncovered the remains of this early city, they have been stunned by what they've found. The inhabitants of Çatalhöyük lived in a world where the line between the living and the dead seemed incredibly thin. Burials were conducted inside the homes, beneath the floors. In some cases, the skulls of the deceased were carefully removed, cleaned, and displayed in the homes of their families, suggesting a profound reverence, or perhaps an obsession, with death and ancestry. But what did these practices mean? Were the people of Çatalhöyük engaging in rituals of remembrance, honoring the spirits of their ancestors? Or were they trying to harness the power of the dead to keep their presence alive in the daily lives of the living? It's a question that remains unanswered. In addition to the eerie burials, the walls of Çatalhöyük tell their own story. Intricately painted murals, many depicting animals, bulls, lions, and leopards, cover the walls of the dwellings. Some of these paintings seem to tell stories, but their meanings have been lost to time. Were these images symbolic of some early religious belief? Or were they simply a reflection of the natural world, an attempt to capture the beauty and power of the animals around them? The murals also hint at something else, the possible connection between humans and the divine. Some depictions include figures that appear to be human-like, with strange, abstract features. Could these figures represent gods, ancestors, or even early forms of shamanistic practices? The speculation continues, but the truth remains elusive. Equally perplexing are the animal bones and figurines that have been uncovered at the site. Among them are sculpted representations of women, some with exaggerated features, fertility symbols perhaps? Or were they representations of deities worshipped in the shadows of this ancient city? The fact that women are so prominently featured in these artifacts points to a possible matrilineal society, one where the divine feminine was central to their worldview. Despite the fascinating finds, much about Çatalhöyük defies explanation. The scale of the settlement itself is staggering. This wasn't just a small village, but a thriving, complex society. And yet, for all its grandeur, there are no clear indications of a governing structure, no evidence of leaders or kings, no royal palaces or temples. Was Çatalhöyük a communal society, one where every individual had a role and power was shared? Or were there hidden layers of complexity, a kind of social order that has been obscured by time and decay? Then, there's the mystery of how the city was abandoned. By around 5000 BC, Çatalhöyük was gradually left behind, its inhabitants disappearing into history. What happened? Was it a natural disaster, such as a sudden drought or earthquake, that caused them to leave? Or was it something else? An internal collapse, a shift in social or environmental conditions that made the city untenable? And why did they choose to leave in such a quiet, almost deliberate way, without leaving behind signs of destruction or war? The answers to these questions remain elusive, and as archaeologists continue to uncover new layers of the site, the deeper mystery of Çatalhöyük only grows. It is a place that continues to provoke thought and speculation, a testament to a civilization whose story may never be fully told. As we reflect on this ancient city, one question lingers. What else might still be hidden beneath the earth, waiting to reveal its secrets to those willing to listen? Far from the bustling cities of the world, on a small, seemingly inconspicuous island off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, lies one of the most persistent and eerie mysteries known to history: Oak Island. It is a place where the winds seem to whisper of secrets, and the ocean's waves crash against the shore as though guarding something ancient, something buried beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered. Oak Island's legend has fascinated explorers, treasure hunters, and historians alike for over 2 centuries, yet the question remains: what, if anything, lies at the heart of this enigmatic place? Nestled in the cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean, Oak Island is a small, lush patch of land, roughly 140 acres in size. At first glance, it might seem like an ordinary island. Nothing remarkable to distinguish it from the hundreds of other small islands that dot the landscape of Canada's maritime provinces. But it is precisely this ordinariness that has only heightened the mystery. For beneath its unassuming soil, Oak Island is believed to harbor something extraordinary, hidden away for centuries. The island's legend began in 1795, when a young man named Daniel McGuinness first spotted something peculiar, a depression in the ground near a large tree. Intrigued, he dug into the soft earth, but what he discovered left him both puzzled and captivated. A layer of flagstones, almost perfectly placed, as though something had been sealed away in the ground, waiting to be found. McGuinness's curiosity sparked the first of many excavations on Oak Island, and over the years countless others would follow. But as soon as the digging began, the island seemed to fight back. Every attempt to uncover whatever lay buried beneath the soil was met with setbacks, floods, cave-ins, and mysterious obstacles that made any significant progress nearly impossible. Yet the deeper the holes went, the more puzzling the discoveries became. In the late 18th century, the digging uncovered a shaft filled with water, which seemed to flood every time an attempt was made to go deeper. By the early 19th century, the legend of Oak Island had grown to epic proportions, with whispers of hidden treasure, pirate plunder, and cryptic symbols woven into the very soil of the island. What could possibly explain the strange flood tunnels that seemed to protect whatever was buried on Oak Island? Some theorists speculate that it was the work of pirates, perhaps the infamous Captain Kidd, whose treasure was said to be hidden in remote locations around the world. Others have suggested that the island might hold the secrets of the Knights Templar, a medieval order of knights said to have hidden their treasures after their fall from grace. Yet, despite years of digging, these theories have remained just that: speculation. As each layer of earth is removed, new questions arise, and no answers have come easily. The first serious excavation took place in 1804, when a company of men attempted to reach the supposed treasure. They dug down over 90 feet, encountering a series of peculiar objects: a stone inscribed with mysterious symbols, pieces of wood that seemed to have been placed strategically at various depths, and even a metal plate, all of which hinted at something significant hidden far below. But then, just as they were closing in on the object, the pit began to flood. Water filled the shaft so rapidly that it became impossible to continue the excavation. To this day, no one knows what caused the flooding. whether it was a natural phenomenon or the result of a deliberate trap designed to keep the treasure hidden. As the years went on, other attempts were made to excavate the site, and more bizarre finds were uncovered. In the 19th and 20th centuries, teams of explorers found pieces of gold, jewelry, and even human bones, though some of these discoveries were later debunked or dismissed as hoaxes. But with each failed attempt, the island's mystery grew only deeper. How could an island, so small and unassuming, hold such an impenetrable secret? What lay beneath the surface that was so powerful, so elusive, that it had caused generations of men to risk everything in search of it? As Oak Island's fame spread, so too did the theories about what might be hidden there. Some believed that it was the treasure of the legendary pirate Captain Kidd, whose hoards of riches had never been fully recovered. Others speculated that the island might have been the final resting place of the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred relic of biblical fame. Still others clung to the idea that the island was a hiding place for the lost manuscripts of the ancient Knights Templar, who were thought to have secreted away vast treasures before being disbanded in the 14th century. Some even believed that the treasure was nothing less than the Holy Grail itself, hidden away by early Christian monks. One of the most enduring and speculative theories is that the treasure could have been hidden by the Masons, a fraternal order that has long been associated with mysteries and secret knowledge. The presence of peculiar symbols and artifacts on Oak Island, symbols often linked to Freemasonry, has fueled this theory, though no conclusive evidence has been found to support it. Could it be that a secret order of men, bound by oaths and codes, used Oak Island as a hiding place for their most valuable possessions? And if so, what might those possessions be? And why were they hidden in such a perilous and difficult-to-reach location? While these theories remain speculative, there are a few facts that cannot be denied. Oak Island has been the site of many excavations over the years, each of them revealing new layers of mystery. In the 1960s, a group of treasure hunters known as the Oak Island Tourists built a causeway to the island and began serious excavations. They discovered a series of stone workings, what appeared to be the remains of ancient tunnels, and a strange, deep pit that seemed to go on forever. Despite their best efforts, the treasure hunters were never able to recover anything of significant value, and the island once again slipped into obscurity. The most recent attempts to uncover Oak Island's secrets have been documented in a popular television series, The Curse of Oak Island. Over the years, a team of modern-day treasure hunters has continued to dig, using state-of-the-art technology and methods that were unavailable to previous generations. Using ground-penetrating radar, sonar equipment, and even underwater submersibles, they have uncovered new evidence, including metal objects, wood fragments, and stone formations. Yet, like all those who came before them, they too have faced the island's many challenges. Each new discovery raises new questions, but the ultimate prize, if it exists, remains elusive. One of the most compelling mysteries surrounding Oak Island is not the treasure itself, but the sheer persistence of the island's defenders and seekers. Why, after all these years, do people continue to dig? Why do they risk their time, their money, and even their lives to uncover something that may not exist at all? Perhaps the island's true treasure lies not in gold or jewels, but in the enigma itself, the puzzle that refuses to be solved, the mystery that continues to captivate the imagination. So, as the winds whip across the shores of Oak Island, stirring the leaves of ancient trees and carrying the sounds of distant waves, we are left to wonder, what lies beneath the earth of this small island, shrouded in mystery and guarded by countless obstacles? Is there a treasure hidden so deeply, so carefully concealed, that it will forever remain beyond our reach? Or is the real treasure the mystery itself, one that will continue to haunt the island for centuries to come? The answers may never come, but the question remains. What secrets does Oak Island hold, and who will be the one to finally unlock its buried past? The mystery of Oak Island is one of those rare stories that has captivated imaginations for centuries, drawing explorers, treasure hunters, and historians alike into its enigmatic grip. Nestled in the cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean, off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, this small island has become the site of an obsession that has persisted for more than 200 years. What began as a curious discovery by a young man named Daniel McGinnis in 1795 has since blossomed into one of the most enduring legends in the world of treasure hunting and lost secrets. It all started innocently enough. McGinnis noticed a depression in the ground near a large tree, and upon digging, he found something that defied explanation: a layer of flagstones carefully placed in the earth. This discovery set off a series of excavations that would span generations, with each digging attempt met with setbacks, floods, cave-ins, and mysterious obstacles that seemed to protect whatever was buried beneath. Despite the frustrating conditions, the mystery only deepened, and with every failed attempt to reach whatever lay below, new clues emerged: pieces of wood, metal plates, and even a stone inscribed with mysterious symbols, all pointing to the possibility that something extraordinary was hidden on the island. But why did Oak Island seem to fight back so fiercely? Flood tunnels that filled the shafts whenever anyone tried to dig deeper raised the most pressing question: was this the work of pirates, hiding their treasure? Some theories suggest the infamous Captain Kidd may have buried his plunder there. Others, drawing on historical whispers, point to the Knights Templar, who were said to have hidden their wealth after their downfall in the 14th century. Yet, after all this time and many excavations, the true answer remains elusive, and no definitive evidence has ever emerged to prove any one theory. In the early 19th century, an excavation team dug down over 90 feet and discovered a shaft filled with water, a series of peculiar objects at various depths, and what appeared to be deliberate constructions meant to conceal something below. But just as they were closing in on their goal, the floodwaters made it impossible to continue. Was it a natural phenomenon, or was it the work of an ingenious trap designed to protect something precious? As the years passed, more strange discoveries were made: pieces of gold, jewelry, and even human bones, though some of these were later dismissed as hoaxes. The deeper the treasure hunters went, the more complicated the mystery became. How could a small, unassuming island harbor such an impenetrable secret? What could be hidden there, buried so deep and so carefully protected by nature and possibly human design, that generations of men had risked everything in their quest to uncover it? Theories about what lies beneath Oak Island's surface range from the practical to the fantastical. Some believe it's the treasure of Captain Kidd, whose fortune was never recovered. Others suggest it could be the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, or even the lost manuscripts of the Knights Templar, whose secrets might still lie hidden from the world. There are even those who propose that Freemasons might have hidden some ancient and valuable artifact on the island, with the symbols found on Oak Island serving as a clue to their involvement. Despite all these speculations, no one has yet uncovered anything definitive. In the 1960s, a group of treasure hunters known as the Oak Island Tourists began serious excavation and discovered several stone workings and signs of ancient tunnels, but their efforts were equally futile. The island seemed determined to keep its secret. The more recent excavations, especially those documented in the popular television series, The Curse of Oak Island, have introduced modern technology to the search. With ground-penetrating radar, sonar equipment, and even underwater submersibles, these treasure hunters have uncovered new evidence, including metal objects, wood fragments, and stone formations. Yet the ultimate prize, if it exists, remains elusive. Why do people continue to dig? Why have generations of treasure hunters, some losing their lives or their fortunes, devoted themselves to Oak Island's mystery? The answer may lie not in the treasure itself, but in the enigma, the puzzle that has no clear solution. Oak Island's true treasure might not be the gold, gems, or artifacts hidden beneath the soil, but the mystery itself, the allure of the unknown that continues to pull people back to the island year after year, generation after generation. As the winds sweep across Oak Island and the waves crash against its shores, we are left to wonder, what lies beneath? Is it treasure beyond imagination, or is the real treasure the mystery that has consumed so many for so long? Perhaps, in the end, Oak Island's greatest secret will never be revealed. Perhaps the island will forever guard its secrets as the winds and waves continue to whisper of what lies beneath the earth. And perhaps the greatest answer of all is simply that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. As we leave behind the mysterious ruins of Çatalhöyük, with its ancient secrets still echoing through the earth, we now journey to another corner of the world, where the past seems to speak, quite literally, through the stone itself. In the heat of the Egyptian desert, standing like silent sentinels on the banks of the Nile, are the Colossi of Memnon. These two massive statues, once towering over a grand temple complex, have fascinated travelers, historians, and archaeologists for centuries. But the true nature of these statues, and the voices they were said to have once carried, still eludes us. Could these colossal figures, carved to honor a forgotten king, hold the key to a mystery that has echoed across time? The Colossi of Memnon are undeniably imposing. Each statue, more than 60 feet tall, depicts the seated figure of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, one of Egypt's most powerful rulers. Carved from massive blocks of sandstone, these statues seem to defy time, their weathered faces and bodies still visible, even as centuries of wind, sand, and neglect have taken their toll. The king's hands rest on his knees, his legs spread wide in an eternal stance of power and dominance. These are not just monuments. They are symbols, grand expressions of divine authority, meant to protect the king's memory long after his death. Yet, as impressive as they are, it is not just their size or craftsmanship that has captured the imagination of the world. It is the strange phenomenon associated with them. For thousands of years, travelers have claimed to hear a sound, a voice, emanating from the statues at dawn. Ancient writers, such as the Greek historian Strabo, described it as a strange noise or a singing that seemed to come from the statues themselves. But was this simply a case of imagination running wild, or is there something more to this strange phenomenon? The first recorded mention of the singing statues appears in the writings of Pliny the Elder, who lived in the 1st century A.D. According to his accounts, the statues made a squeaking or creaking noise at dawn, which was attributed to the breaking of the stones due to the heat of the sun. But even then, the local Egyptians had their own interpretation. They believed that the sounds were the voices of the dead Pharaoh Amenhotep III, reaching out from the afterlife to communicate with the living. This association of the statues with the voice of the king would become central to the legends surrounding the Colossi. For centuries, the phenomenon persisted. Visitors to Egypt, from the Greeks to the Romans, reported hearing the strange noise, often linking it to a divine message or a supernatural event. Some even went as far as to describe the sounds as prophetic, claiming that the statues spoke of future events or offered blessings and warnings. But what was the source of the sound? Modern scholars have explored a number of possible explanations. One of the most commonly cited theories is related to the natural erosion of the statues. Over the years, cracks and fissures in the stone have allowed the wind to pass through them in certain conditions, creating a sound that could be mistaken for a voice. Some have suggested that the vibrations caused by the temperature fluctuations between night and day, when the desert air shifts from cold to warm, may cause the stone to creak or produce low-frequency sounds. This phenomenon, known as thermal expansion, is common in large stone structures exposed to extreme temperature variations. Yet, even with this natural explanation, something about the Colossi's sound remains curious. The phenomenon was not merely a random noise. It seemed to occur at a specific time, in a specific context. At dawn, when the first rays of sunlight touched the statues, the sounds would begin. It's as if the statues were awakening, as if the past was coming to life in the quiet stillness of the desert morning. The consistency and timing of the phenomenon, combined with the long-standing belief in the statue's supernatural significance, suggests that there is something more to the mystery than just physical processes at work. In the 1990s, a team of engineers and archaeologists attempted to study the phenomenon in greater detail, using modern technology to measure the sounds and analyze the vibrations. While they confirmed that natural processes, like wind and temperature shifts, did indeed play a role, they also noted that the sound was not consistent across all conditions. In some instances, no sound was produced, and in others, the noise was particularly loud and distinct. Could it be that the conditions needed to produce the sound were more specific than we first realized? Or could it be that something else, something deeper, was at play? Could the vibrations be a result of an ancient design, a subtle element of the statues meant to resonate with the environment and with the human ear? Beyond these explanations, there are the more speculative theories. Could the Colossi of Memnon have been constructed with an unknown purpose, one that involved the manipulation of sound itself? Some have suggested that the statues were designed not just to commemorate Amenhotep III, but to serve as instruments of communication. The ancient Egyptians were highly advanced in their understanding of acoustics, and some researchers have speculated that the sounds produced by the statues were deliberately created as part of an elaborate ritual, one that tied the pharaoh's memory to the divine and sought to harness the power of sound as a means of connecting with the gods. The idea that sound itself could hold a sacred or mystical quality is not far-fetched. Throughout history, many cultures have understood sound to be a powerful force, capable of healing, of invoking the divine, and even of affecting the fabric of reality. Could the Colossi have been designed to function as part of a grander spiritual design? Were they meant to amplify certain frequencies that would reach beyond the physical realm, drawing the pharaoh closer to the gods? This theory, though speculative, touches on the mystery of how ancient cultures may have seen their monuments not just as symbols, but as living, vibrating entities. The story of the Colossi of Memnon is more than just a tale of two stone figures. It is a story of how the ancient world sought to engage with the mysteries of the universe, through sound, through symbols, through the very materiality of the earth itself. Even if we cannot fully explain the phenomenon, the fact remains that these statues have left a mark on history. They continue to fascinate, to invite wonder, and to provoke questions about how ancient people understood the connections between life, death, and the divine. As we stand before these ancient figures, their silent presence seems to hold a message, one that transcends time. Was the voice of Memnon truly the sound of a king reaching out from the beyond, or simply the result of the natural world speaking in ways we cannot always comprehend? And if the statues could speak, what secrets would they reveal about the pharaohs, the gods, and the ancient world that created them? The mystery of the Colossi endures, just as the voices of the past continue to echo across the sands of time. As we leave behind the ancient voices of the Colossi of Memnon, our journey now takes us to a site that has remained largely shrouded in mystery, a place where the whispers of the past are buried beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered. Mehrgarh, located in what is now modern-day Pakistan, is one of the oldest known urban settlements in the world. But unlike other famous archaeological sites, it does not have the grandeur or the fame of civilizations like Egypt or Mesopotamia. Instead, it sits quietly, nestled in the fertile plains of the Bolan Pass, a forgotten jewel in the early history of human civilization. Discovered in the 1970s, Mehrgarh's significance only becomes clearer with each passing year. The site spans an area of nearly 100 hectares, and it is believed to have been continuously inhabited for more than 2,000 years, beginning as early as 7,000 BC. In many ways, it predates the rise of the great urban civilizations of the Indus Valley, yet it offers glimpses into the very foundations of what would become one of the most sophisticated cultures the world had ever known. At first glance, Mehrgarh appears to be a simple agricultural settlement, mud brick houses, granaries, and small workshops. But as archaeologists have carefully excavated the site over the decades, they have uncovered startling evidence that suggests Mehrgarh was much more than just a rural village. The people of Mehrgarh were among the first to domesticate animals like cattle and goats, and they were also cultivating crops such as barley and wheat. But what truly sets Mehrgarh apart is the discovery of early forms of metallurgy, copper tools and ornaments, showing that its inhabitants were already experimenting with the manipulation of metals long before the famous civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Yet it is not just the technology that makes Mehrgarh so fascinating. It is the hints of a complex, highly organized society that were so far ahead of their time. In the early layers of the site, archaeologists have found evidence of ritualistic practices, including figurines of animals and humans, as well as elaborate pottery decorated with intricate designs. The people of Mehrgarh seemed to possess an understanding of art, culture, and religion that defied their era. Could they have had contact with other ancient cultures? Or was this development truly independent, an isolated blossom of human ingenuity that emerged in the heart of South Asia? As we delve deeper into the mysteries of Mehrgarh, we encounter an even greater enigma, the early evidence of what may have been a form of writing. In one of the earliest layers of the settlement, archaeologists uncovered small clay tablets, some marked with patterns and symbols that may have been an early script. While the symbols are far from definitive, they raise a critical question. Could the people of Mehrgarh have developed their own writing system, predating the known scripts of Mesopotamia and Egypt? Or is it possible that these early signs were not part of a formal writing system at all, but rather a form of symbolic art, a way to represent ideas or concepts in a visual language? This question has sparked fierce debates among scholars, but no clear answer has emerged. And yet, the mere presence of these symbols points to something extraordinary: the possibility that the foundations of writing itself were being laid in Mehrgarh, long before we had previously thought. The discoveries at Mehrgarh continue to astound. For example, in later layers of the site, we find evidence of complex trade networks, stretching as far as the Iranian Plateau and the Arabian Peninsula. The people of Mehrgarh were not isolated, as many early societies were thought to be. Instead, they were part of a larger world, one in which ideas, goods, and technologies were exchanged across vast distances. This hints at a level of sophistication far greater than originally believed. But it is the question of religion and spirituality that may provide the most intriguing puzzle. While the early inhabitants of Mehrgarh did not leave behind monumental temples or palaces, they did leave behind objects of great significance. The figurines, some depicting human-like figures with exaggerated features, others showing animals, hint at a belief system that may have revolved around fertility, nature, and the cycle of life and death. Were these figurines idols of worship, representations of gods or ancestors? Or were they more personal, meant to provide protection, fertility, or good fortune to the people who owned them? The lack of a clear, written record leaves this question wide open to interpretation. But what is undeniable is that the people of Mehrgarh had a deep, spiritual connection to the world around them. A relationship that transcended mere survival and extended into the realm of the divine. The most puzzling element of Mehrgarh, however, might be the eventual disappearance of the civilization itself. By around 1500 BC, the settlement had been abandoned and its inhabitants had moved away. The reasons for this remain unclear. Did environmental changes, perhaps a shift in the climate or the depletion of local resources, lead to the collapse of Mehrgarh? Or were there other factors at play, such as invasions or social upheaval? The truth remains buried beneath the layers of earth and time, and as researchers continue to study the site, the mystery of Mehrgarh's decline persists. Adding to the intrigue is the possibility that Mehrgarh was not a singular, isolated civilization, but rather one part of a larger network of early urban settlements that spread across the subcontinent. Some scholars speculate that the people of Mehrgarh may have been the precursors to the more famous Indus Valley civilization, known for its advanced cities such as Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. If this is true, then Mehrgarh represents an early, forgotten chapter in the story of one of the world's oldest and most enigmatic cultures. But could Mehrgarh be even older than we realize? Could there be yet undiscovered layers of the site, buried beneath centuries of sediment, that contain further evidence of an even earlier, more complex society? Or could there be other, undiscovered settlements in the region, offering new clues that will change our understanding of the beginnings of human civilization? The answers remain elusive, but with each new discovery, the story of Mehrgarh becomes richer and more complex. As we stand on the edge of this ancient city, it is impossible not to feel the weight of the past pressing in on us. What secrets did the people of Mehrgarh carry with them when they left? And what, if anything, have we lost in the passage of time, knowledge, wisdom, or understanding about the world's earliest civilizations? The questions persist, and the answers remain hidden in the dust of the Bolan Pass, waiting for us to unearth them. In the silence of the desert, amid the winds that whisper through the ruins, one cannot help but wonder what other forgotten stories lie buried beneath the surface waiting to be discovered. And could Mehrgarh, with all its mysteries, hold the key to understanding the very origins of human civilization itself? The night is still and silent on the warm, vast expanse of the Malacca Strait, where the dark waters stretch endlessly between the islands of Southeast Asia. Beneath the starry sky, the sea is deceptively calm, but it is in this very silence that one of the most chilling maritime mysteries unfolds. In 1947, a distress signal came in from the Ourang Medan, a Dutch freighter. The message was brief, frantic, and nonsensical. All officers, including the captain, are dead, lying in the chart room and on the bridge, possibly whole crew dead. Then, the transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a deep, eerie silence in its wake. The story of the Ourang Medan is one that lingers in the mind like an unsettling ghost story. Its chilling mystery has remained unsolved for decades, sparking countless theories, debates, and speculation. Was it a supernatural tragedy? Or was there a more earthly explanation that has been lost to time, waiting to be uncovered? The story begins with that cryptic message. The Ourang Medan was a freighter making its way from Indonesia to Costa Rica, carrying a cargo of general goods. The ship was not known for being in distress or facing any major problems. However, as it passed through the narrow waters between the Malay Peninsula and Sumatra, something catastrophic happened. The distress signal that reached a nearby American vessel, the Silver Star, was enough to send it into action. A team was dispatched to investigate. Upon reaching the coordinates where the Ourang Medan was located, the crew of the Silver Star saw the freighter adrift in the water. Strangely, there was no sign of any life on board, but there was something odd about the situation. The ship's lifeboats were still in place, the hatches were closed, and everything seemed eerily untouched. What was most unnerving, however, was the sight of the crew. As the Silver Star's crew boarded the ship, they were met with an immediate, overwhelming sense of horror. The bodies of the Ourang Medan's crew were scattered across the deck and below, in the galley and throughout the ship, as though they had collapsed suddenly, mid-action. Their faces were frozen in expressions of sheer terror, their eyes wide open, their mouths agape in what appeared to be a final scream. The officers were found in the ship's chart room and on the bridge with similar expressions, their hands still gripping their controls, their bodies stiff and lifeless. Even more unsettling was the fact that there were no visible wounds or signs of violence. It was as though something had caused the entire crew to die instantly, in a state of absolute horror. The investigation took a bizarre turn when the crew of the Silver Star entered the engine room. There, they found that the ship's engine had been running, but there was no one operating it. There was no apparent cause of death, no poisoning, no weapons, no sudden illness that could account for the carnage. Just an overwhelming, unexplainable air of death that permeated the ship. The ship's cargo, too, was undisturbed. Nothing had been looted, no valuables taken. But as the investigation continued, things only grew stranger. After the bodies were discovered, the Ourang Medan was towed toward a nearby port for a more thorough investigation. However, before the ship could reach port, a fire broke out in its hold. In a matter of hours, the Ourang Medan was consumed by flames and sank to the bottom of the sea. There was no explanation for the fire, no reason it should have occurred. Some claimed the fire was set intentionally by the crew to cover up something sinister. Others suggested it was an electrical malfunction, though no evidence supported such a conclusion. The fate of the Ourang Medan and its crew remained shrouded in mystery. Despite the horror and the curiosity surrounding the case, no further investigations were able to reveal the truth behind what happened on that ill-fated voyage. What could have caused the deaths of all those aboard the Ourang Medan? What was the true nature of the ship's final hours? Some theories have been put forward to try and explain the inexplicable events of the Ourang Medan, but each of them remains speculative at best. One explanation centers on the idea of toxic gases. Some suggest that the crew might have been exposed to a deadly, invisible gas, perhaps leaking from the cargo hold or engine room, which could explain the sudden collapse of the crew and their terrifying expressions. The gas might have been a byproduct of the cargo the ship was carrying, or perhaps a chemical reaction from the ship's engine, causing poisoning that led to death within moments. This theory, though grounded in science, does not account for the eerie stillness of the bodies and the strange fire that followed. Another theory suggests that the Ourang Medan could have encountered a natural phenomenon known as sea silt, a sudden, dense cloud of gas that can occur in certain parts of the ocean, causing asphyxiation or sudden illness. The phenomenon is rare, but it has been recorded in some maritime disasters. However, the fact that there were no signs of poisoning or asphyxiation, and that the ship's cargo remained intact, makes this explanation less likely. A more dramatic theory leans into the supernatural. Perhaps the Ourang Medan's fate was the result of a curse, or some form of malevolent force that brought doom to the ship and its crew. Given the chilling expressions on the faces of the crew and the mysterious circumstances surrounding their deaths, it is tempting to imagine that something otherworldly may have been at play. Was it a ghost ship? A vessel cursed by the spirits of the sea? Was it an ancient force, hidden deep beneath the waves, that rose up to claim its due? Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Ourang Medan mystery is the uncertainty that surrounds it. Though many people have heard the tale, there is very little concrete evidence to support any one theory over another. Some question the authenticity of the distress signal itself, suggesting it could have been a hoax or a mistake. Others believe the whole story could be nothing more than a maritime legend, a chilling tale spun from the fabric of fear and imagination. However, the number of eyewitness accounts from the Silver Star crew, as well as the official records that support the existence of the ship, provide a solid foundation for the mystery, one that refuses to be easily dismissed. As time has passed, the Ourang Medan has become one of the most enduring ghost stories of the sea. It haunts the corners of maritime lore, a tragedy without a clear explanation. Was it the result of a natural disaster, an industrial accident, or something far darker and more sinister? The lack of answers leaves the case open, and the ghost of the Ourang Medan continues to drift through the shadows of maritime history. We may never know the full truth behind the Ourang Medan. The ship itself lies at the bottom of the sea, its secrets entombed in the dark depths, beyond the reach of modern technology and investigation. The crew, too, remain silent, frozen in their final, terror-stricken expressions, as if the truth of their deaths is something they took to their graves. And so, the mystery persists, leaving us with one final question. What happened to the Ourang Medan? And what dark force, whether natural or supernatural, was responsible for the eerie fate that befell its crew? The ghost ship remains lost, but its story is far from over. It will continue to drift through history, a chilling enigma that refuses to be forgotten. The tale of the Ourang Medan is one of the most chilling and haunting mysteries of the sea, a maritime legend that continues to send shivers down the spine of those who hear it. The events that unfolded in 1947 remain an enigma, and the eerie silence that followed the distress signal sent out by the Dutch freighter lingers unanswered. The mystery began with a brief, frantic transmission that was received by a nearby American vessel, the Silver Star. The words that came through the radio were cryptic and haunting. All officers, including the captain, are dead, lying in the chart room and on the bridge, possibly whole crew dead. Then, abruptly, the transmission ceased. The message was disjointed, nonsensical, almost as if the speaker was unable to fully comprehend what was happening, or was simply overcome by fear. The ship was en route from Indonesia to Costa Rica, carrying a general cargo. It was an ordinary freighter, and there was nothing to suggest that it was in any danger. Yet, somewhere between the Malay Peninsula and Sumatra, something went horribly wrong. The distress signal alone was enough to spur the crew of the Silver Star into action. They rushed to the coordinates provided and found the Ourang Medan drifting aimlessly in the calm waters of the Malacca Strait. What they encountered was far from ordinary. Upon boarding the ship, the crew of the Silver Star found the Ourang Medan eerily deserted. The lifeboats were still in place, the hatches were sealed tight, and everything appeared untouched, as though the ship had simply been abandoned. But as they ventured deeper into the ship, they were met with an unimaginable sight. The bodies of the crew were scattered throughout the vessel, their faces frozen in expressions of terror, eyes wide, mouths agape as if they had died mid-scream. There were no visible injuries, no signs of violence. The officers were found in the chart room and on the bridge, their bodies still clutching their controls, rigid and lifeless. Even more unsettling was the engine room. The engines were running, yet there was no one to operate them. There was no poisoning, no sign of disease or illness, no obvious cause for the deaths. The cargo remained undisturbed, and nothing was missing from the ship. It was as if something unseen and unnatural had swept through the vessel and claimed the lives of everyone aboard without a trace. The investigation took an even more bizarre turn when the ship was being towed toward a nearby port for further examination. A fire suddenly broke out in the hold, and in a matter of hours, the ship was consumed by flames and sank to the bottom of the sea. There was no apparent cause for the fire, and no one could explain how it started. Some speculated that the fire might have been set intentionally, perhaps to cover up some sinister truth. Others considered the possibility of an electrical malfunction, but again, no evidence supported this theory. Despite the haunting scene aboard the Ourang Medan and the curiosity that followed, no one ever solved the mystery. The fate of the ship's crew remains shrouded in uncertainty. What could have caused such a horrific, unexplained event? What was the true nature of the deaths that claimed the entire crew? Various theories have been proposed over the years, but each one remains speculative. Some believe that the crew was exposed to toxic gases, perhaps leaking from the cargo hold or a chemical reaction in the ship's engine. This theory suggests that the gas could have caused sudden poisoning, leading to the crew's collapse in an instant. But this does not explain the strange lack of signs of asphyxiation, the odd fire that followed, or the faces frozen in terror. Another theory suggests a more natural phenomenon: sea silt. This is a rare event in which dense clouds of gas from the ocean floor rise to the surface, causing sudden asphyxiation. However, the lack of visible evidence supporting this theory and the intact cargo makes it unlikely. The most dramatic theory leans into the realm of the supernatural. Given the chilling expressions on the crew's faces and the odd circumstances surrounding their deaths, some wonder if the Ourang Medan fell victim to a curse, or if a malevolent force from the deep ocean claimed the ship. Was it a ghost ship, driven by vengeful spirits? Or could it have been a vessel claimed by some ancient force, buried beneath the waves for centuries? Some even suggest that the event was a hoax. Perhaps the distress signal was fabricated, or there was some misunderstanding in the transmission. But the numerous eyewitness accounts and official records of the ship's existence lend credence to the mystery, even if the truth remains elusive. Over time, the Ourang Medan has become a legend, one of the most chilling ghost stories of the sea. Whether it was the result of a natural disaster, an industrial accident, or something far darker, the mystery remains unsolved. And the final question lingers. What truly happened to the Ourang Medan? Was it a natural tragedy or something otherworldly? Perhaps we will never know. But the ghost of the Ourang Medan will continue to haunt the maritime world for generations to come, a mystery that drifts through the waters of time, forever unanswered. As the mysteries of the Chachapoya fade into the misty highlands of Peru, we turn our gaze to the dense forests of Canada, where another enigma awaits, a story wrapped in cryptic symbols, hidden beneath layers of time, and forever tied to a single carved stone. This is the mystery of the Kensington Runestone, an artifact that has baffled historians, archaeologists, and linguists for over a century. Discovered in 1898 in the woods near the town of Kensington, Minnesota, the stone is no ordinary relic. It is a 200-pound slab of gray granite, roughly 31 by 16 inches in size, carved with runic symbols that resemble the writing of the Vikings. Yet the message etched into the stone tells a tale that does not seem to belong in North America, or even the 14th century, for that matter. The inscriptions on the Kensington Runestone are unique, a sequence of letters arranged in a pattern, with some symbols resembling older forms of Norse runes, others appearing more cryptic and unidentifiable. The stone tells a story of a group of men, 8 Goths and 22 Northmen, who traveled westward from a base camp, marking their journey with a message carved on the stone. They claim to have traveled to this area of what is now Minnesota in 1362, a full century before Christopher Columbus would even set sail for the Americas. But was this stone truly carved by Vikings, or is it an elaborate hoax, a mystery created by someone with a vivid imagination? The first thing that strikes you when you look at the Kensington Runestone is its eerily precise inscriptions, symbols that, to the trained eye, appear similar to those found on other Norse artifacts from the Viking Age. Some runes seem to match those used in medieval Scandinavian texts, while others are uniquely unrecorded, creating an immediate intrigue. The stone itself is too distinct, too meticulously carved, to dismiss as the work of an amateur. Could it really be a relic of Viking exploration, a forgotten chapter in the history of Norse seafaring? When the stone was first discovered in the late 19th century, it caused an immediate sensation. The man who uncovered it, a Swedish immigrant named Olof Oman claimed to have stumbled upon the stone while clearing trees from his land. He believed it had been placed there by a group of Vikings who had sailed across the Atlantic, reached the American Midwest, and left a record of their journey in the form of this mysterious stone. Oman, along with his family, insisted that they had found the stone in its natural location, undisturbed by human hands. The implications were profound. Evidence that the Vikings had not only reached North America, but had left behind a physical trace of their travels. Evidence that, for many, would push the boundaries of what we knew about pre-Columbian exploration. Yet skepticism was swift. The Kensington Runestone, despite its appearance, quickly became a subject of intense controversy. Critics claimed that the runes were a product of the 19th century, created as part of a hoax to gain fame or attention. They pointed to the seemingly modern nature of some of the runes and the inconsistent style of the carvings, suggesting that the stone was more a product of 19th century imagination than ancient Norse exploration. The discovery of the stone at the height of the Viking fever in the late 1800s, when many believed the Vikings had reached far beyond Greenland, raised further suspicion. Could it be that Oman or someone else had planted the stone as a clever forgery? Or was this an ancient artifact, too advanced and complex for the time? Despite the critics, the idea that the Kensington Runestone was an authentic Norse artifact never truly disappeared. Some proponents argued that the runes were too intricate, too detailed, to have been created by anyone other than someone familiar with the Old Norse script. The phrase, "we had been in the West," as translated from the inscription, seemed to suggest a journey not just across the ocean, but a land so far removed from Scandinavia that it could only refer to the North American continent. What other evidence could we point to, if not this stone, that might suggest the Vikings reached the heart of the continent centuries before Columbus? The most compelling argument for the stone's authenticity lies in the details etched into the rock. The inscription describes an event that allegedly occurred in 1362, a Viking expedition that had come across hostile natives, with one man having been killed in the process. This is a striking detail, one that could easily be fabricated, yet resonates with the documented history of Viking exploration. The Vikings, after all, were known for their raiding and trading expeditions, reaching as far as the British Isles, Iceland, Greenland, and even parts of North America. Could the events described on the stone be a genuine account of a Viking journey into the interior of the North American continent? However, this theory leaves many unanswered questions. If these Vikings truly ventured into the Midwest in the 14th century, why is there no other evidence of their presence? No long-lost settlements or artifacts that might confirm such a far-reaching expedition? In the centuries that followed the stone's discovery, archaeologists and historians have found no signs of any Viking outposts or encampments in the area surrounding the Kensington Runestone. Could the Vikings have come, carved their message, and then disappeared without leaving a trace? Or is it possible that the stone's inscriptions were misinterpreted, and it was never meant to be a record of Norse exploration at all? There are other mysteries associated with the stone that deepen the intrigue. The inscription includes a peculiar mix of symbols that do not seem to match any known Norse runic system from the period. Some of the runes are interpreted as Gothic, a term that is often used to describe the people of ancient Eastern Europe, but is not commonly associated with Norse runes. This oddity suggests that the individuals responsible for carving the stone were not only skilled in Norse runes, but were perhaps part of a distinct group with ties to both Scandinavian and Eastern European traditions. What does this unusual mixture of cultures mean? Could it point to a broader cultural exchange or even an undocumented migration that linked these distant regions? Some have gone even further, suggesting that the Kensington Runestone might not be a relic of Norse or Viking origin at all. Could it, in fact, be a much later forgery, created by someone with a deep knowledge of Scandinavian culture? perhaps seeking to create a new myth or story about ancient North America? While this theory seems unlikely to some, it would not be the first time in history that a forged artifact has sparked such intense curiosity and debate. At the heart of the mystery lies a simple but profound question. Why was this message carved into stone in the first place? Why would an expedition traveling so far from their homeland choose to leave a record of their journey at a time when writing was not a widespread practice among Norse explorers? Was it an attempt to mark their passage, to document an extraordinary journey that defied the limits of the known world? Or was it something more, a signal to anyone who might later come across the stone, perhaps a warning or a symbol of possession, or a cryptic message meant to be understood by only a select few? As we consider the Kensington Runestone in its full mystery, one thing becomes clear. Whether it is a genuine Viking artifact or an elaborate hoax, it stands as a testament to the power of history to create lasting intrigue. And as more and more modern techniques are employed to study the stone, from advanced dating methods to computer analysis of the runes, the mystery remains unsolved. What if the stone is not just a relic of a forgotten journey, but a deeper puzzle, one that points to the unknown? What secrets are hidden within its weathered surface, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to question the past? The answer, like so many of history's mysteries, remains just out of reach, leaving us to wonder if the true story of the Kensington Runestone will ever be fully revealed. After the silence and isolation of the Canadian Arctic, we now turn our attention to another mysterious and seemingly inexplicable phenomenon, one that stretches across the vast, uncharted waters of the world. The sea, so often a source of both wonder and fear, has long been a realm of mystery, where the unknown lies just beneath the surface. It is here, in the liminal space between myth and reality, that we encounter the story of the Phantom Islands, places marked on ancient maps, but which, upon closer inspection, either never existed or seemed to vanish without a trace. For centuries, explorers and cartographers have charted the world's oceans, drawing lines between continents and sketching the shape of distant lands. But not all the lands on those maps were ever found. Some were marked with names like Thule, Antilia, or the Isle of Demons, while others were simply labeled with a vague promise of terra incognita, unknown lands to be discovered in the future. Yet these islands, so real in the minds of sailors and mapmakers, often remained elusive, sometimes fading into myth, sometimes becoming part of stories told over fires on dark nights at sea. But were they just figments of the imagination, or did they exist? And if so, where did they go? One of the most notorious examples of these phantom islands was High Brazil, a mysterious land that appeared on European maps for centuries, yet could never be found. According to early accounts, High Brazil was a lush, green island, located to the west of Ireland, shrouded in mist and often only visible once every 7 years. The earliest references to this island date back to the 14th century, though it continued to appear on maps long into the 16th and 17th centuries, often in roughly the same location, yet still out of reach for any explorer. The name itself, High Brazil, evokes a sense of an otherworldly place, filled with enchantment and mystery. Some early accounts even described it as an island inhabited by a mysterious race of people who possessed advanced knowledge and magical abilities. This idyllic vision of a utopian island persisted, despite numerous expeditions to locate it, all of which failed. Over time, the island was relegated to legend. Yet, inexplicably, it continued to appear on maps well into the 19th century, suggesting that the belief in its existence endured long after it had been abandoned by explorers. But if High Brazil was not a mirage, then what could explain its persistent appearance on maps? Some historians speculate that it was a misinterpretation of the geographical features discovered during voyages of exploration. For instance, It has been suggested that the island may have been a misidentified landmass like the Azores or the Canary Islands, which were distant and often shrouded in mist. Could these islands have been mistaken for the elusive High Brazil by sailors who, having limited knowledge of the vast Atlantic, created their own theories based on their fleeting glimpses of land? And yet, despite all the explanations, High Brazil remained stubbornly absent from reality. Another phantom island with a similarly tangled history was Sandy Island, which first appeared on maps in the 19th century. Located off the coast of Australia, it was marked in a seemingly precise location, with all the trappings of a real and tangible landmass. Its first recorded sighting was made in 1876, when the HMS Investigator supposedly discovered it. The island was listed on maps for over a century, yet when modern-day expeditions set out to find it, the island could not be located. In 2012, an Australian team used satellite technology to scan the area where Sandy Island had once been marked, only to find that there was no land at all in the area. It was as though the island had never existed. What caused the island to appear on maps in the first place? Some have suggested that it was an error, a mistake made by sailors who misread their instruments or incorrectly interpreted their surroundings. The island may have been a mirage, a natural optical illusion caused by the refraction of light in the warm, humid air over the ocean. Others believe that it was simply a case of cartographic errors passed down through generations of mapmakers. What is clear, however, is that the island vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only questions. Yet, Sandy Island is not the only instance of such phenomena. The Isle of Demons, the island of St. Brendan, Labrador, and even the land of the Seven Cities of Gold all reflect the strange allure of these phantom lands. St. Brendan's Isle, for example, appeared on maps as a large, fertile island off the coast of North America. According to legend, the Irish monk St. Brendan had discovered it during a journey in the 6th century, though no historical evidence of such a voyage exists. For centuries, the island was said to be located off the coast of Labrador or Newfoundland. Early European explorers, hoping to capitalize on the myth, made several attempts to locate it, but all efforts ended in failure. In fact, some of the most compelling phantom islands stemmed from the age-old practice of exploration myths, where the desire for discovery sometimes exceeded the available evidence. These mysterious lands could be the result of miscommunication between sailors, rumors, or even deliberate hoaxes designed to add mystique to the places yet to be discovered. Mapmakers themselves, motivated by curiosity or superstition, could have added these islands to their charts as placeholders for areas not yet explored. One particularly curious case is that of the Isle of the Seven Cities of Gold, which appeared on Spanish maps in the 16th century. According to legend, a group of Spanish explorers stumbled upon a prosperous city built from gold in the southwest of the present-day United States. The cities were rumored to be filled with treasures, riches beyond imagination. Several Spanish expeditions set out in search of the fabled cities, but after years of fruitless searching, they returned empty-handed. No trace of such cities was ever found. Yet the legend endured, passing into the world of myth and folklore, long after the last searcher had abandoned the quest. What lies behind the creation of these phantom islands? Were they merely the product of human error, or do they speak to something deeper? The desires, hopes, and fears of those who ventured into the unknown. As much as these islands were shaped by myth and legend, they also shaped the men who sought them. Each voyage into the unknown carried with it the hope of discovery, the promise of riches, and the allure of the unexplored. But when these lands failed to materialize, the questions only deepened. Could these phantom islands be something more? Could they represent a forgotten history or a lost civilization? Some speculate that these islands may have been real, and simply erased from history by the passage of time, natural disasters, or even political forces. Others have suggested more fringe theories, that some of these islands might have existed at one point, only to sink beneath the waves, swallowed by the ocean, as though they had never been there at all. What if these places, however fleeting or strange, are not just remnants of a cartographic error, but fragments of a past that has been deliberately erased or lost to time? The stories of phantom islands persist, and while many of the islands in question have been disproven or debunked, the mystery remains. What if some of them were real? What if the search for them is not a search for the past, but for something deeper? The boundary between myth and reality, between the known and the unknown. The maps may have changed, but the allure of discovery endures. So, as we stand on the edge of the known world, peering into the vast, unexplored ocean, we must ask ourselves, how many phantom islands still remain, hidden beneath the waters, lost in the fog of time, waiting to be found? As we reflect on the curious history of phantom islands, it's clear that the line between reality and legend is often far more blurred than we might expect. These islands, whether they were the result of mistaken observations, misinterpretations, or deliberate embellishments, reveal the deep human desire to discover, understand, and conquer the unknown. The ocean, with its vastness and mystery, has always been a place where imagination runs wild, and the allure of the unseen holds a powerful grip on explorers and dreamers alike. The concept of phantom islands invites us to think about the nature of maps and the way they represent not just geography, but also our collective hopes and fears. Maps are more than just tools for navigation. They are also reflections of the cultures and periods that create them. What we see on a map is shaped by human perception, influenced by myth, superstition, and the limitations of the time. In many ways, the stories of phantom islands are a testament to the age of exploration. They remind us of a time when the world was still largely unknown, and every voyage carried with it the possibility of encountering something extraordinary. Whether or not these islands ever existed, their legacy persists in the imagination of those who came after, offering endless possibilities for what lies beneath the surface of our understanding. Even as modern technology has made it easier to chart the oceans and verify the existence of land masses, the appeal of the unknown still lingers. We continue to search for new frontiers, both on our planet and in the cosmos. The legacy of phantom islands suggests that the unknown is never truly conquered. It simply evolves, and new mysteries always arise to take their place. For all the maps that have been drawn, and all the territories that have been explored, there are still places that remain elusive, even in the 21st century. The mystery of the Phantom Islands serves as a reminder that, for all our knowledge, there is still much that we do not understand. The vastness of the oceans, the complexity of the natural world, and the depths of human imagination all contribute to the continued allure of these mythical lands. It is also worth considering the possibility that some of these phantom islands may have had a real-world basis that has been lost to time. Perhaps ancient civilizations did inhabit places that were later swallowed by the sea, or perhaps islands once existed in places where the ocean has since claimed them. Such speculations add another layer of intrigue to the stories of these mysterious lands. Regardless of their origin, the Phantom Islands serve as a powerful metaphor for the human quest for knowledge. They challenge us to question the boundaries between myth and reality, and to explore the unknown with both skepticism and wonder. In many ways, the search for these islands was not just about finding land, but about discovering something deeper about ourselves, the limits of our understanding, and the vast potential that lies beyond the horizon. As we continue to chart the world around us, the stories of these phantom islands should not be dismissed as mere curiosities. They are part of a larger narrative about exploration and discovery, one that has shaped our history and continues to inspire us today. Whether or not they were real, the Phantom Islands remind us that the journey itself is often as important as the destination, and that the pursuit of the unknown is a never-ending adventure. So, as we look toward the future and the mysteries that await, we must keep in mind that the ocean, with all its vastness and secrets, will always hold a certain magic. Perhaps some phantom islands still lie hidden beneath the waves, waiting for the right explorer to uncover them. Or perhaps they exist only in our imagination, forever etched in the pages of our maps, waiting to be rediscovered as part of the timeless human spirit of exploration. In the end, the mystery of the Phantom Islands is not just about missing land masses, but about the way we view the world and our place within it. The journey of discovery is ongoing, and with every new exploration, we not only seek new territories, but also seek to understand the myths and legends that have shaped our world. Perhaps it's not the islands themselves that are important, but the questions they raise and the stories they leave behind, urging us to keep searching, keep wondering, and keep exploring. As the bitter winds of the Canadian Arctic howl across the frozen landscape, the icy waters of the Franklin Strait churn silently, cutting through the white expanse like a blade through silk. The vast, unyielding wilderness stretches as far as the eye can see, broken only by the jagged silhouettes of glaciers and the occasional patch of barren rock. It is here, in one of the harshest, most inhospitable environments on Earth, that one of history's greatest maritime mysteries unfolded. In 1845, the British Royal Navy set out on an ambitious expedition to chart the Northwest Passage, the long-sought sea route through the icy waters of Canada's northern territories. Sir John Franklin, a seasoned explorer with decades of experience, commanded the two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. With a crew of 129 men, Franklin's expedition was well equipped, and the ships were fitted with the most advanced technology of the time, including steam engines and the latest navigational instruments. The goal was clear: to complete the final leg of the Northwest Passage, linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans by sea. But as the months passed and the Arctic winter closed in, the expedition disappeared. When word of their disappearance reached Britain in 1848, the nation was thrown into shock. How could such a well-prepared and experienced crew vanish without a trace in one of the most heavily explored regions of the world? Despite the extensive search efforts, the mystery of the Franklin expedition remained unsolved for over 150 years, its answer buried beneath layers of ice and time. What happened to Sir John Franklin and his men? And why, despite years of searching and countless theories, did their fate remain so elusive? The last known record of the expedition was a brief note, written by Franklin himself in 1845, indicating that the ships were frozen in the ice near King William Island. From there, the trail goes cold. No one knows exactly what happened in the years that followed, but it is certain that the expedition was doomed long before its final, tragic days. What is known is that Franklin's two ships became trapped in the ice during the winter of 1846, forcing the crew to abandon their attempt to navigate the passage and seek shelter. Over the course of the next year, the men were subjected to the extreme conditions of the Arctic, a relentless winter, scarce food supplies, and the crushing isolation of the frozen wilderness. They were stranded, cut off from the rest of the world, and for months there was no contact with the outside world. The expedition was slowly falling apart, piece by piece, and yet it was not until 1848 that anyone realized just how disastrous the situation had become. Search parties were sent out, and several expeditions ventured into the Arctic, retracing Franklin's route, but they found no survivors. In fact, they found little evidence at all. It wasn't until 1850, when a British search expedition stumbled upon a series of cryptic clues, that the first signs of the crew's tragic fate began to emerge. These included skeletons, abandoned equipment, and remnants of the two ships, Erebus and Terror, but no sign of Franklin or his men. The only evidence that survived was a collection of journals and notes that revealed the true extent of their ordeal. Among these journals, there were hints of a descent into madness, despair, and, eventually, death. According to the documents, it became clear that the crew had struggled to maintain their health and morale in the face of unrelenting cold, hunger, and illness. The men had resorted to drastic measures, eating their boots, their leather straps, and whatever else they could find, all the while waiting for the ice to melt enough for them to continue their journey. But the ice never released them, and the men began to die, one by one. The most chilling revelation, however, came in the form of a series of notes that were found with the wreckage of the ships. They were dated months after the men had abandoned Erebus and Terror, and they suggested that Franklin's crew had taken to walking over the frozen tundra, hoping to reach a nearby outpost or some form of civilization. Yet, the notes were filled with despair. They spoke of death by starvation, and of wretchedness beyond measure, with no clear sense of hope remaining. And then, the most unsettling fact emerged. The final tragic note was written by Franklin himself, stating that the expedition had abandoned all hope. What does this mean? Were the men simply victims of a cruel fate? Or was there more to the story than meets the eye? Could there have been something else at play? Something that caused the entire crew to perish in such a dramatic and disheartening way? One possible explanation lies in the conditions of the environment itself. The Arctic ice and its unpredictability had long been a perilous challenge for explorers, and Franklin's ships, though state-of-the-art for their time, were not immune to nature's wrath. The ice that trapped Erebus and Terror was unusually thick, and as the ships remained frozen in place for so long, the men were forced to face not only the brutal cold, but also an ever-dwindling supply of food. As winter settled in, it became clear that survival would depend on their ability to either free the ships or make their way across the ice to find help. But, trapped in a land of nothing but ice and snow, even the most determined crew could not overcome the odds. Yet, there are aspects of the Franklin expedition that continue to elude simple explanation. Some researchers have suggested that the crew may have been victims of lead poisoning, due to the pipes in the ships being constructed with lead solder. This theory is based on the fact that the crew members' teeth were found to contain unusually high levels of lead, which might have contributed to their deteriorating health. But even this theory doesn't fully account for the slow and mysterious disintegration of the expedition. Could the combination of poor nutrition, illness, and the cold have driven the men to extreme measures, including the possibility of cannibalism? Fragments of evidence found by later search parties, such as bones that appeared to have been deliberately cut and marked, strongly suggest that cannibalism did indeed occur among the crew, though the precise nature of those acts remains speculative. Then there is the question of the last known sightings of the men. Did Franklin and his crew abandon their ships in search of salvation, or did something else drive them to leave the relative safety of their vessels? Some researchers believe that they may have been trying to reach the nearby Hudson Bay Company outpost at York Factory, but the harsh environment and their deteriorating physical conditions made it impossible to reach it. Other theories suggest that the crew might have been struck by something more sinister, disease perhaps, or even psychological breakdowns that left them too disoriented to find their way. The mystery remains unsolved, but as more evidence is uncovered, the nature of their fate grows ever more enigmatic. The discovery of the wrecks of Erebus and Terror in the 21st century, deep in the icy waters of the Arctic, was a monumental event. It confirmed many long-held theories about the fate of the expedition, and yet it only deepened the mystery. The ships themselves were remarkably well preserved, revealing much about the men who sailed them, their daily lives, and their struggles. But despite the physical evidence now available, Franklin's disappearance still raises more questions than it answers. How did the men survive as long as they did? What drove them to such extremes? Was the environment simply too harsh? Or was there something else, something unknown, responsible for their tragic end? The mystery of the Franklin expedition remains one of the most puzzling and haunting maritime disasters in history. Even today, despite the discoveries and theories, the question of what truly happened to Sir John Franklin and his crew endures. What drove them to their fate? Were they simply victims of nature's unrelenting cruelty, or did something more insidious play a role? And in the frozen silence of the Arctic, where the wind whispers across the ice and the sea remains undisturbed, is there still a hidden piece of the puzzle waiting to be uncovered? As the ice and snow continue to conceal their secrets, the fate of the Franklin expedition remains an open question, one that may never be fully answered. The mystery of the Franklin expedition, which began with such high hopes of charting the Northwest Passage, remains one of the most perplexing and tragic chapters in the history of exploration. Sir John Franklin and his crew, equipped with the best technology of their time, ventured into the unforgiving Arctic wilderness, only to meet an untimely and haunting fate. Despite extensive search efforts, clues remained elusive for over a century, leaving behind an unsettling question. How did such a well-prepared expedition end in disaster? At the heart of this enigma lies the brutal and unpredictable nature of the Arctic environment. The ice, which trapped the ships Erebus and Terror, was not just a physical barrier, but a force of nature that tested the limits of human endurance. The crew, once full of optimism, was eventually overwhelmed by the cold, starvation, and isolation. What should have been a journey of discovery turned into a fight for survival against elements beyond their control. Yet, as researchers delved into the remains of the expedition, the evidence began to suggest a far more complex tale. The journals and notes left behind painted a picture of growing despair, revealing the toll that both the physical environment and perhaps internal health issues took on the men. From the discovery of high levels of lead in their bodies to the disturbing possibility of cannibalism, the crew's suffering unfolded in dark and unsettling ways. But did these dire conditions truly explain the disappearance, or was there something else at play? Theories abound, from the possibility of lead poisoning caused by the ship's construction to psychological breakdowns under immense stress. While these theories offer partial explanations, they don't fully account for the eerie silence that followed their disappearance, nor the shocking reports of the crew's final desperate attempts to find help. Some researchers suggest the men were driven to leave their ships in search of safety, but could the harsh conditions have affected their judgment to the point of irrational decisions? The further we look, the more questions seem to emerge. Despite the discovery of the wrecks of Erebus and Terror in recent years, the mystery remains unresolved. The ships, remarkably well preserved, offered new insights into the crew's lives and struggles, yet their fate still refuses to be fully explained. How did the men manage to survive as long as they did in such dire circumstances? What drove them to such extremes? The search for answers continues, with each new discovery only adding to the enigma rather than solving it. In the end, the Franklin expedition is more than just a story of a failed mission. It is a poignant reminder of the fragility of human life in the face of nature's vast, unrelenting power. It underscores the limits of human endurance and the constant tension between human ambition and the natural world's overwhelming force. The ambition to conquer the unknown, to chart the last great frontier, ultimately led to the downfall of the expedition, leaving behind a haunting legacy. The many expeditions that followed in search of Franklin and his crew reveal a persistent obsession with uncovering the truth. Each new discovery has brought us closer to understanding the men's fate, but it has also illuminated the depths of their suffering and desperation. Whether the men of the Franklin expedition were victims of natural forces or succumbed to a deeper psychological breakdown remains uncertain, but their story is one of ultimate sacrifice in pursuit of knowledge. The Arctic, with its icy desolation, has preserved the mystery of the Franklin expedition, hiding pieces of the puzzle beneath layers of ice and time. The cold, silent waters and vast, unyielding expanse of snow offer no easy answers, only a lingering reminder that nature's harshness can render even the most well-prepared expeditions powerless. The discovery of the wrecks has brought us closer, but the silence of the Arctic is deafening in its refusal to provide complete closure. What makes the mystery so enduring is not just the tragedy itself, but the unanswered questions that continue to haunt us. Was Franklin's mission doomed from the start, or did a series of unfortunate events conspire to seal the fate of the crew? Could there be something about the Arctic's unforgiving landscape that, beyond its extreme cold and isolation, hides other dangers, some we have yet to fully understand? As we stand at the edge of this frozen wilderness, gazing into the icy void that consumed Franklin and his men, we are reminded of the profound and enduring mystery of the unknown. The ice that holds their secrets is not just a physical barrier, but a metaphor for the limits of human knowledge. No matter how much we learn about the expedition, some mysteries may always remain, lost in the frigid silence of the Arctic, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to risk everything to solve them. On a quiet hill in the heart of Barbados, there sits an old cemetery, its weathered tombstones etched with names long forgotten by time. Beneath the tropical sun, the wind rustles through the trees, and the occasional flutter of a bird's wings disrupts the stillness. But there is something about this place that has intrigued visitors for centuries. For in this remote graveyard lies a mystery that remains as unsettling today as it was when it first captured the imagination of locals and outsiders alike. This is the story of the moving coffins of Barbados. In the early 1800s, the small village of Chase, Barbados, became the unlikely center of one of the most puzzling and eerie phenomena in the history of the Caribbean. In the cemetery of the parish church of St. James, a series of unexplained events began to unfold. Coffins, which had been securely placed in the ground, would mysteriously shift, sometimes appearing to be completely rearranged or even opened. The phenomenon continued over a span of years, with multiple reports of the coffins changing positions despite there being no sign of foul play or natural causes to explain such movements. This was not just the ravings of the superstitious or the fanciful. The events were well documented, and witnesses described scenes so peculiar that they couldn't be easily dismissed. What began as a local mystery soon attracted attention from across the island, and even from overseas. The question was simple: how could coffins, sealed, heavy, and immobile, move on their own? The earliest reports of this strange occurrence began in the 1800s, but it was only in 1807 that the phenomenon gained widespread attention. A group of locals, alarmed by the strange movements, opened the tomb of a man named Thomas Hennis, a deceased plantation owner. What they found was astonishing. Hennis's coffin had been shifted several feet from its original position. The lid had been pried open, and his body was missing. Strangely, his remains had not decayed in the way one might expect after being buried for several years, but were instead unusually well preserved. Was this some trick of nature, a bizarre twist of fate? Or was there something else at work, something not yet understood? As word spread, more coffins were exhumed, and the pattern became undeniable. In several instances, the bodies had shifted in their coffins, some appearing to have been removed, only to return days later in seemingly different positions. There were reports of footprints around the graves, although no one ever discovered who, if anyone, was responsible for these inexplicable movements. Over the years, different theories emerged to explain the strange happenings. One of the more grounded explanations suggested that the unusual movement of the coffins was caused by the unstable conditions of the soil. Barbados is a land rich in limestone and coral, and some believe that the shifting ground beneath the graves could have caused the coffins to move, particularly during heavy rains or flooding. The natural settling of the soil might account for the shifting of the coffins, but this did not explain why they seemed to rearrange themselves in seemingly deliberate patterns, or why bodies appeared to be disturbed. Another theory was more rooted in the supernatural. Local folklore often told of spirits roaming the earth, restless and unsatisfied with the finality of death. The shifting of the coffins was interpreted by some as a sign of the deceased returning to the land of the living, or perhaps the work of an angry force trying to convey a message. Could this be a spiritual reckoning? A punishment for the sins of those buried there? Or perhaps a dark ritual, unknown to all but the island's most secretive inhabitants? As the phenomenon continued, it even inspired more fringe theories, suggesting that the moving coffins were not just a local curiosity, but a harbinger of something more sinister. Some believed it was the result of a voodoo curse, while others speculated that the movement could be linked to ancient, hidden rituals, possibly linked to practices brought to the island by enslaved Africans. Were the coffins moving on their own, or was some hidden hand behind their strange journey? Could this be a message from the grave, a warning or a plea for something forgotten? Perhaps the most troubling aspect of this mystery was that the strange occurrences seemed to stop as abruptly as they had begun. The coffins, once moving with disturbing regularity, suddenly ceased their restless journeys. The cemetery fell silent once more, and the legend of the moving coffins began to fade into the annals of history, relegated to the realm of strange tales and unsettling folklore. Yet, the unanswered questions linger. The official explanations, ranging from natural causes to the far-fetched notions of curses and spiritual unrest, have failed to provide a satisfactory resolution. The bodies that had been exhumed never seemed to return to their original resting places, and there was no evidence of any practical or natural explanation for the movements that occurred. Was it simply an elaborate hoax? A misunderstanding of natural phenomena? Or is there something more to this mystery? Something that has remained hidden beneath the soil for over 2 centuries? To this day, the graves at the St. James Cemetery stand, quiet and undisturbed, their secrets buried deep. But the moving coffins of Barbados continue to haunt the minds of those who dare to explore them. What really happened in those early years of the 1800s? And what, if anything, does the land itself know about the dead that we do not? The answers, it seems, may never be fully uncovered. Yet the questions remain, whispering through the palm trees and the shadows of the forgotten graves. What is it that lies beneath the surface, waiting to be revealed? And how far will we go to uncover the truth? The mystery of the moving coffins, still unsolved. From the sun-baked ruins of Mehrgarh, we now turn our attention to a place far to the west, where the air grows cooler and the landscape becomes steep and misty, so high up, in fact, that the clouds themselves seem to kiss the mountaintops. It is here, in the remote highlands of northern Peru, that the mystery of the Chachapoya, known as the Cloud People, has remained hidden for centuries. This enigmatic culture, shrouded in the mist of the Andes, is one of South America's most intriguing yet least understood civilizations. The Chachapoya are often overshadowed by their more famous neighbors, such as the Inca, but their story is no less remarkable. Known for their striking mountaintop citadels, breathtaking burial sites, and remarkable art, the Chachapoya thrived in isolation for centuries, creating a legacy that still puzzles modern archaeologists. Who were these Cloud People, and why have their secrets remained so elusive? Their forgotten mystery seems to call out from the mist itself, begging to be understood. The heart of the Chachapoya civilization lies in the highlands of the Peruvian Andes, where the mountains rise sharply from lush valleys, enveloped in a near-permanent veil of mist and fog. Here, the remains of ancient settlements cling to the sides of sheer cliffs, their stone structures appearing as though they were carved directly into the rock. The most famous of these sites is Cuelap, a massive fortress-like complex, often described as the Machu Picchu of the cloud forests. Yet, unlike the Inca, whose ruins are celebrated the world over, the Chachapoya have largely been forgotten, their history scattered like the clouds that shroud their homes. Cuelap itself is nothing short of extraordinary. The site is perched at an altitude of 3,000 meters, nearly 10,000 feet, above sea level, and its 600-meter-long stone walls enclose a sprawling complex of temples, residences, and ceremonial structures. The sheer scale of Cuelap, combined with its remote location, suggests a people who were both skilled in engineering and fiercely protective of their independence. Its stone walls, some of which reach over 20 feet in height, speak to a society capable of organizing large-scale labor and construction projects. Yet, when you step into the heart of the site, you are met with an eerie silence, a reminder of the mystery that still surrounds the Chachapoya civilization. How did such a society, so advanced in its architecture and artistry, vanish from history so completely? Despite the impressive physical remains of the Chachapoya, their written records are non-existent. Unlike the Incas, who left behind a wealth of information in the form of quipu, knot records, and other documentation, the Chachapoya left no such legacy. Their absence from historical accounts only deepens the mystery. The Inca, when they arrived in the region in the 15th century, referred to the Chachapoya as the Cloud People, a name that hints at the culture's connection to the ethereal world of the mountains and fog. But beyond this brief mention, little else is known. What happened to the Chachapoya? Why did they seemingly disappear from history, leaving only their stone monuments behind? The Chachapoya are best known for their burial practices, which are unlike anything seen in other pre-Columbian civilizations. Many of their tombs were located high in the cliffs, often in caves or specially constructed burial platforms known as purun machos. These platforms, built with intricate stonework, are suspended high above the valley floor, sometimes perched hundreds of feet above the ground. The remains of the deceased were carefully placed in these structures, often in seated positions, facing the sacred mountains that the Chachapoya revered. Some of these tombs contain elaborate funerary objects, such as ceramics, textiles, and mummified bodies, testament to the importance of the afterlife in Chachapoya culture. But what truly sets these burial sites apart are the chulpas, vertical cylindrical burial towers that are scattered across the Chachapoya heartland. These structures are often built into the sides of cliffs, giving the appearance that the dead were meant to remain high above the world of the living, forever connected to the sky. Some chulpas are as high as 30 feet, made of stone and sometimes surrounded by elaborate carvings. The bodies, wrapped in textiles, were placed inside these towers, sometimes with their faces exposed to the open air, facing the mountains or the sky. Was this a form of worship, a way of connecting the dead with the spiritual world? Or were these burial practices linked to a belief that the deceased could watch over their descendants from the heights, from the very clouds themselves? Yet, as impressive as these burial practices are, they raise a haunting question. Why did the Chachapoya choose to bury their dead in such precarious and often inaccessible locations? Was it simply a reflection of their reverence for the deceased? Or did these burial sites serve a more pragmatic function, perhaps to protect the dead from looters or invaders? The Inca, who conquered the Chachapoya in the 15th century, are believed to have been responsible for the destruction of many of these sacred sites, but the Chachapoya were no strangers to violence either. Did they fear the desecration of their ancestors? And if so, did that fear drive them to place their tombs in places that seemed almost impossible to reach? The mystery of the Chachapoya deepens when we consider their artistic legacy. Though they did not have the same monumental structures as the Inca or the Maya, the Chachapoya left behind vibrant murals, textiles, and ceramics that hint at a rich cultural heritage. These artifacts suggest a people who were highly skilled in weaving and pottery, using intricate designs to express their worldview. But one of the most striking features of Chachapoya art is its use of symbolism. The Chachapoya often depicted stylized human figures with exaggerated, almost otherworldly features, large eyes, elongated faces, and intricate headdresses. Were these figures meant to represent deities or ancestors? Or were they abstract representations of concepts like death, the afterlife, or the relationship between the living and the spiritual world? But despite the beauty and complexity of Chachapoya art, we still don't fully understand its meaning. Archaeologists have uncovered stunning murals in some of the tombs and ceremonial spaces of Cuelap, but the symbolism behind these works remains a subject of debate. Could the Chachapoya have had a form of writing, a visual language that has yet to be deciphered? Or were these works of art purely symbolic, a way to communicate with the divine and the ancestors through images rather than words? The answers, like so much about the Chachapoya, remain elusive. One of the most intriguing questions surrounding the Chachapoya is their eventual disappearance. By the time the Inca arrived in the region in the 15th century, the Chachapoya had already been significantly weakened, and many of their cities were abandoned or in decline. Some scholars suggest that the Chachapoya may have been decimated by disease or internal conflict, which opened the door for the Inca to conquer them. But there are also theories that the Chachapoya may have been more resistant to Inca rule than was previously thought. Did they hold out against the Inca longer than we know? Or were their cities simply too remote for the Inca to fully integrate into their empire? And if the Chachapoya were conquered, what happened to their cultural identity? Did their descendants assimilate into Inca society, or did the legacy of the Cloud people survive in hidden corners of the Andes? Perhaps the most compelling mystery of all is whether the Chachapoya still have a living presence today. Many indigenous groups in the region claim to be descendants of the Chachapoya, and there are oral traditions that speak of a proud and resilient people who lived in the clouds. Could it be that the Chachapoya, though largely forgotten by history, never truly disappeared? Could their descendants still walk the highlands of Peru, carrying with them the stories and secrets of their ancient ancestors? As we stand before the ruins of Cuelap and the crumbling burial towers of the Chachapoya, one question lingers. What happened to the Cloud people? What forces, whether environmental, political, or cultural, caused this once great civilization to fade from history? And is there still more to learn, hidden in the mist and shadows of the Andes, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to search for answers? The forgotten mystery of the Chachapoya is far from solved, and with each new discovery, the story of these Cloud people becomes more fascinating and more elusive. What lies beyond the clouds? Perhaps in time we will know. As the sun sinks below the horizon and the land is bathed in an eerie twilight glow, we are reminded of the deep, unsettling silence that often follows the passage of great armies. For much of human history, armies have marched across the earth, leaving their mark on civilizations, shaping the course of wars and empires. But some armies, instead of becoming legends, have disappeared, vanishing without a trace, leaving only the faintest echoes of their existence behind. The fate of these lost armies remains one of history's most puzzling and unnerving mysteries. The world is filled with stories of vast legions that seemingly vanished into thin air, swallowed by the earth, or lost to time. From the deserts of the Middle East to the dense forests of the Far East, these enigmatic disappearances have stirred imaginations for centuries. Were they victims of an ancient curse, swallowed by the wrath of gods or nature? Or did something more ordinary, yet still unfathomable, cause their disappearance? The answers may never be fully understood, but the stories of these lost armies continue to captivate our minds. One of the most famous and perplexing cases of a lost army occurred in the vast deserts of China. In the 3rd century BC, the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, was in the midst of unifying the country. Along the way, he employed a vast army of soldiers who were tasked with defending the emperor's territory and ensuring the success of his reign. Among these soldiers was a massive force, said to be tens of thousands strong, that disappeared mysteriously, leaving no sign of its fate. The disappearance of this army remains unsolved. Some believe the soldiers simply succumbed to the harsh desert conditions, their bodies lost to the sands, while others suggest they were defeated by a foreign force or even turned on each other. There are even theories that the soldiers were victims of a brutal betrayal by their own leadership, left to perish in the unforgiving environment of the desert without any means of survival. But no matter the theory, no evidence of the lost army has ever been found. Was this truly the end of an entire legion, or could something else, something far more sinister, have caused their vanishing? Another famous case of a lost army comes from the heart of Europe, where the infamous lost legions of Varus disappeared in the dense German forests in 9 AD. The Roman Empire, at its peak, was vast and powerful, stretching from the British Isles to the edges of Mesopotamia. Yet, in the wilds of Germania, the empire met a brutal and unexpected defeat. A Roman general, Publius Quinctilius Varus, led his army of 3 legions, approximately 20,000 men, into what would become known as the Teutoburg Forest. In a carefully planned ambush, Germanic tribes, led by the chieftain Arminius, wiped out the Roman legions in a devastating and surprise attack. The defeat shocked the Roman Empire to its core. The battle was so complete and brutal that the fate of the entire Roman force became one of history's most haunting mysteries. Unlike the armies of other battles, the remains of the Varus legions were never recovered. While some bodies were found, they were mutilated beyond recognition, as though the very idea of Roman authority was to be eradicated. What happened to the rest of the army? Some historians suggest that the soldiers were massacred to the point of complete destruction, with the bodies either left to rot or hidden deep in the forest. Others believe the bodies were buried in mass graves, yet their locations remain undiscovered. Over time, the battle became more legend than fact, with many believing that the lost legions of Varus were not simply defeated, but erased from history. Did this force vanish into the forests forever, or could the ghosts of these soldiers still haunt the woods, waiting for someone to uncover the truth? Far to the east, in the vast Mongolian steppes, another army met its mysterious fate. The Xiongnu Empire, a confederation of nomadic tribes that dominated Central Asia during the Han Dynasty, was one of the most powerful forces of its time. In the early 2nd century BC, the Chinese Emperor Wu of Han waged a series of campaigns against the Xiongnu, seeking to expand the empire's control over the region. The Han Empire's most significant campaign against the Xiongnu took place in the year 121 BC, under the leadership of General Wei Qing. In a bold move, Wei Qing led his army across the harsh desert and mountain landscapes of modern-day Mongolia, pursuing the Xiongnu into their very heartland. But somewhere in the wilderness, the vast army simply vanished. Despite numerous expeditions and strategic movements, the soldiers, who were said to have numbered tens of thousands, disappeared without a trace. Some believe the harsh conditions of the Mongolian steppes caused the soldiers to be swallowed by the unforgiving terrain, while others speculate that the Xiongnu simply ambushed them, overwhelming the force with their own superior knowledge of the land. But still, the question lingers. What happened to the remnants of this army? Were they wiped out by nature, or was there something more sinister at play, something that erased them from history completely? On the other side of the world, in the forests of ancient North America, there are stories of yet another lost army, one that allegedly crossed the seas from Europe long before the arrival of Christopher Columbus. The story begins in the 16th century when a group of Spanish explorers, led by the infamous Hernando de Soto, traveled deep into the southeastern regions of what is now the United States. Their journey was brutal, filled with conflict and hardship as they searched for riches and glory. The expedition traversed thousands of miles, fighting battles with indigenous tribes and facing disease and starvation. But what happened to De Soto's army? While the Spanish conquistadors eventually returned to Mexico, the exact fate of many of their soldiers is unclear. Some historians suggest that the army was decimated by conflict and sickness, while others argue that the soldiers were lost entirely, with their bodies never recovered. Despite extensive searches, no definitive evidence has been found to confirm what happened to De Soto's men. Was their disappearance a result of the same ruthless forces that drove so many other expeditions to failure? Or could there be something else, something forgotten, that caused these men to vanish without a trace? Perhaps one of the most mysterious lost armies in history is the Army of the 10,000, a Greek mercenary force that marched through Persia in the 5th century BC. Led by Xenophon, the army found itself stranded deep within the Persian Empire after the death of their employer, the Persian prince Cyrus the Younger. Surrounded by hostile forces and cut off from any safe passage, the army was forced to make a perilous journey back to Greece through the rugged and unforgiving terrain of modern-day Turkey and Iraq. What makes this story particularly mysterious is that, despite their incredible journey, many of the soldiers never returned home. Some historians argue that they were simply overwhelmed by the harsh conditions, while others believe that the army was betrayed by local leaders or was the victim of a cunning ambush. Xenophon's writings describe a determined, resourceful army, but the fact that so many of the soldiers perished without any clear explanation raises unsettling questions. How could such a disciplined, powerful force simply vanish from history? These are just a few examples of armies that disappeared without leaving any conclusive trace. But they share a haunting theme. In every case, the forces involved were vast, their missions significant, and their fates unexplained. Were these armies swallowed by nature, destroyed by betrayal, or erased by some unseen hand? The history of these lost legions raises the question: how many more armies remain hidden beneath the sands of time, their secrets buried in the soil, waiting to be uncovered? As we delve into these mysteries, one thing becomes clear. The past is often more elusive than we might think. The armies of antiquity may have marched across the earth, but their final moments remain shrouded in silence. What really happened to them, and why have they disappeared? These questions are unlikely to be answered fully, but as long as the mysteries remain, the search for answers will continue. Could these lost armies hold the key to understanding our past, or are their secrets lost forever in the shadows of history? Only time will tell. The sunset glow that washes over the earth at twilight holds a strange sense of finality. It signals the end of another day, just as the lost armies of history signal the end of chapters that were never meant to be written. Throughout history, armies have marched to conquer, to protect, to expand, but some have vanished into the pages of legend, disappearing without a trace. These are not the armies that forged empires or became the subject of stories passed down for generations. These are the lost armies, forces so mysterious that their fates remain one of history's most unsettling puzzles. One of the most enduring and mysterious disappearances occurred in the vast deserts of China, where in the 3rd century BC, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, sought to unite the country under his rule. During this time, an army of tens of thousands of soldiers set out to protect the emperor's vast territory. However, as they traversed the harsh desert, they vanished without a trace. What happened to these soldiers? Some theories suggest they succumbed to the brutal desert conditions, their bodies lost to the sands. Others believe they were defeated by a foreign enemy, or that an internal betrayal led to their destruction. But despite numerous attempts to search the desert, no evidence of the army's fate has been found. Did they simply perish? or was there something more sinister at play? Another famous case of a lost army happened deep in the forests of Germany in 9 AD. The Roman Empire, at the height of its power, sent one of its most skilled generals, Publius Quinctilius Varus, into Germania with an army of 20,000 men, 3 Roman legions. But what awaited them in the dense, shadowy Teutoburg forest was nothing like the open fields of battle the Romans were accustomed to. The army was ambushed by a coalition of Germanic tribes, led by the former Roman ally, Arminius. In a stunningly well-executed plan, Arminius and his forces annihilated the Romans in a devastating surprise attack. What happened afterward remains one of the greatest mysteries in history. What happened to the soldiers of the lost legions? While some bodies were found, they were mutilated, their remains scattered or buried in ways that suggest an attempt to erase the Roman presence from the land entirely. But most importantly, the rest of the army disappeared completely. Were the bodies buried in hidden mass graves, lost forever beneath the forest floor? Or did something else happen, something far darker, to erase the legions from history? Were the ghosts of the lost soldiers forever doomed to haunt the forest? Far to the east, in the vast steppes of Mongolia, another army disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The Xiongnu Empire, a confederation of nomadic tribes, was one of the most powerful forces of its time. In 121 BC, the Han dynasty launched a military campaign against the Xiongnu under the leadership of General Wei Qing. The army marched through the barren deserts and rugged mountains, but after reaching the heartland of the Xiongnu, the entire army vanished. What happened to them? Some believe that the soldiers were swallowed by the harsh desert and its unforgiving terrain. Others think that they were ambushed by the Xiongnu or that they perished in an epic struggle. Yet, despite extensive search efforts, no trace of the vast army has ever been found. Were they victims of the land itself, or was there some darker force at play? Meanwhile, in the forests of North America, a 16th-century Spanish expedition led by Hernando de Soto also became a story of disappearance. The conquistadors traveled deep into the southeastern regions of what is now the United States, enduring fierce battles, disease, and starvation. Despite the hardships, they eventually made their way back to Mexico, but many of the soldiers never returned home. What happened to these lost men? Disease and conflict likely took a heavy toll, but many of the bodies were never found, leaving their fate up to speculation. Were they decimated by the forces they encountered, or was there something mysterious behind their vanishing? Perhaps one of the most famous lost armies is the Army of the 10,000, a Greek mercenary force that found itself stranded deep within Persia in the 5th century BC. Led by the famed general Xenophon, the army was tasked with assisting the Persian prince Cyrus the Younger in a bid for the throne. However, after Cyrus's death in battle, the mercenaries found themselves surrounded by hostile forces and cut off from escape. As we ponder the fate of these lost legions, one thing is clear. Their stories, though shrouded in silence, continue to captivate us. What happened to them? Were they swallowed by time, lost to betrayal or treachery, or were they erased by something far mysterious? These questions may never be answered fully, but as long as the mysteries remain, the search for answers will continue. The world is full of secrets, and the fates of these lost armies are perhaps some of the greatest waiting to be uncovered. Only time will tell whether the truth will surface, or whether these soldiers will remain forever lost in the shadows of history. As the night fell over the bustling streets of Philadelphia, the city hummed with the ordinary noises of life, the sound of cars, the chatter of pedestrians, the occasional distant siren. But beneath the surface of this familiar, everyday world, there exists a dark and unnerving mystery that has defied explanation for decades. A story that seems to be pulled from the pages of science fiction, yet is rooted in real events and documented history. The strange case of the Philadelphia experiment. The year was 1943, and the world was in the grips of a Second World War. The United States Navy, alongside scientists and military officials, was desperately searching for any technological edge they could gain to turn the tide of the war in their favor. One of these efforts, known as the experiment, would become infamous for its bizarre nature and its terrifying, unexplainable consequences. At the heart of this story lies a ship, the USS Eldridge, a Navy destroyer escort. On a quiet morning in October, a top-secret project was underway aboard this vessel, one so classified that few people in the outside world were even aware of it. According to the tale, the goal of the project was to develop a new technology that would render ships invisible to radar, a breakthrough that could give the Navy an immense tactical advantage. The plan was to use powerful electromagnetic fields to bend light around the ship, effectively rendering it undetectable by enemy radar systems. It was, at the time, a bold and experimental idea, rooted in the early research of electromagnetism and theoretical physics. But what happened next was far more than anyone could have anticipated. As the experiment progressed, the Eldridge was subjected to intense electromagnetic fields designed to distort the space around it. Then, the inexplicable occurred. According to the most well-known accounts, the ship seemed to vanish, disappearing right before the eyes of those watching. Some reports claim that the Eldridge was no longer visible at all, as if it had been swallowed by some kind of unnatural force. Others say the ship had actually teleported, reappearing miles away from its original location before it blinked out of existence once more. But the most unsettling aspect of the experiment was not the disappearance itself. It was the bizarre effects it had on the crew members aboard the ship. The few men who survived to tell the tale spoke of horrific consequences. According to their accounts, when the ship reappeared after the experiment, the crew was not as they had been before. Some were reportedly fused to the metal of the ship, their bodies becoming one with the structure. Others experienced intense mental distress, with some said to have gone insane from the trauma. Perhaps most chilling of all were the reports that some of the crew members vanished entirely, never to be seen again. It is this disturbing series of events that has given rise to the legend of the Philadelphia experiment, a story that has captured the imagination of conspiracy theorists and history enthusiasts for decades. Yet, despite numerous investigations and theories, the truth remains elusive. What happened to the Eldridge? Was it truly the victim of a failed experiment with devastating consequences? Or is there something more to the story? A hidden agenda, a cover-up, or perhaps an experiment far beyond the scope of what is publicly known? As with many historical mysteries, the Philadelphia experiment is clouded by conflicting accounts and unreliable sources. Some of the earliest reports of the experiment came from Carl Allen, a man who claimed to have been a witness to the event. According to Allen, he was aboard a nearby ship at the time of the experiment and saw the Eldridge disappear before his very eyes. However, Allen's testimony was never officially confirmed, and his credibility has been questioned by many over the years. Despite this, his story formed the basis of the legend, and other witnesses came forward with similar accounts, although none were able to provide irrefutable evidence to support the claims. The official stance, of course, has always been that the Philadelphia experiment never took place. The U.S. Navy has denied any knowledge of such an experiment, and no records have ever been found that confirm the existence of the project. According to the Navy, the Eldridge was in Philadelphia for routine maintenance, and no unusual or extraordinary events occurred. But is this the whole truth? The absence of concrete evidence for or against the experiment only deepens the mystery, leaving room for speculation and theories. Over the years, numerous hypotheses have been proposed to explain what may have happened. One theory centers on the possibility of a highly classified military experiment involving not only radar invisibility, but also more advanced technologies, such as the manipulation of space and time itself. Some suggest that the Eldridge was the subject of an early attempt at teleportation, using quantum mechanics to move objects through space instantaneously. Could the ship have momentarily slipped through a tear in the fabric of space-time? If so, could the disastrous results, the fusion of crew members with the ship, their mental breakdowns, and their mysterious disappearances, be the consequence of tampering with forces beyond human comprehension? Others propose a more grounded, though still speculative explanation, that the ship's disappearance was simply a trick of the eye, a form of optical illusion caused by the powerful electromagnetic fields. These fields could have disrupted the normal functioning of radar systems, causing observers to lose track of the ship's location. In this theory, the Eldridge didn't actually teleport or disappear. It was simply hidden from view by the distortion of light and radar. However, this explanation doesn't account for the many disturbing and inexplicable effects that allegedly followed the event, such as the crew members' physical and mental disintegration. Another theory suggests that the Philadelphia experiment was part of a larger series of secretive military experiments conducted in the shadow of World War II. Could it have been a test not just for radar invisibility, but for some form of mind control or psychological manipulation? Some suggest that the military's interest in advanced technologies during this period extended beyond weapons and radar systems to more esoteric and dangerous methods of warfare. The possibility of psychological trauma and mind control experiments, combined with the stress of war, could explain the bizarre aftermath for the crew members. Despite the many theories, no concrete evidence has ever surfaced to definitively explain what happened during the Philadelphia experiment. In the decades since the event, the story has taken on a life of its own, with books, documentaries, and films inspired by the strange and unsettling narrative. But even as the legend has grown, the truth behind the events of 1943 remains hidden, like a shadow beneath the surface of history. Is the Philadelphia experiment an elaborate hoax, an urban legend built on half-truths and misunderstandings? Or is there something more to the story, something the military, the government, or even the scientific community has chosen to suppress? What truly happened aboard the Eldridge that day in 1943, and why has it remained so elusive, even in the face of decades of inquiry? Could the Philadelphia experiment be an early chapter in the long history of human attempts to manipulate the very fabric of reality itself, or is it simply a dark and mysterious tale, forever unresolved? The answers, if they exist, are likely hidden in classified government archives or buried beneath the layers of time and secrecy. Yet the mystery persists, inviting us to question what we know, and what we may never know, about the limits of human knowledge, experimentation, and the inexplicable forces that sometimes seem to transcend the natural world. In the heart of Philadelphia, beneath the hum of ordinary life, lies a dark and unsettling mystery that has haunted the city for decades. This is the strange and baffling case of the Philadelphia experiment, a tale so bizarre that it seems to belong in the realm of science fiction, yet is rooted in real events from the summer of 1943. This experiment, shrouded in secrecy and controversy, has captivated the imaginations of conspiracy theorists and history buffs alike, with no clear answers to the questions it raises. The story begins during World War II, when the United States Navy, desperate to gain any advantage over the Axis powers, embarked on a secretive project aimed at developing technologies that could shift the tide of the war. The project, which would later become infamous, was conducted aboard the USS Eldridge, a Navy destroyer escort. The goal was to render the ship invisible to radar, making it undetectable to enemy forces. Using powerful electromagnetic fields, scientists and military officials hoped to bend light around the ship, effectively cloaking it from enemy radar. What followed, however, was far beyond anyone's expectations, and the results were more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. On October 28, 1943, as the experiment progressed, something inexplicable happened. According to the most well-known accounts, the USS Eldridge vanished from view. The ship, which had been subjected to intense electromagnetic fields, was said to have disappeared entirely, as if swallowed by an unnatural force. Some reports suggest the ship teleported, reappearing miles away from its original location, only to blink out of existence again. The accounts of the ship's disappearance became so strange and puzzling that they would go on to become one of the most enduring military mysteries in history. But it wasn't just the ship's disappearance that haunted the minds of those involved. It was the bizarre aftermath that followed. The crew members aboard the Eldridge were subjected to horrific consequences. Some survivors reported being fused with the ship's metal structure, their bodies becoming one with the vessel. Others suffered intense psychological trauma, with many said to have gone insane from the physical and mental distress. Even more chilling were the reports that some crew members vanished entirely, never to be seen again. The tragic and disturbing nature of the event gave rise to a legend that would grow in scope and mystery as time went on. The legend of the Philadelphia experiment was fueled by early reports from a man named Carl Allen, who claimed to have witnessed the ship's disappearance from a nearby vessel. According to Allen, he saw the USS Eldridge vanish before his very eyes. While Allen's testimony was never officially confirmed, his account became the cornerstone of the Philadelphia experiment myth, with others coming forward to share similar stories. Yet, despite the growing number of witnesses, no conclusive evidence has ever been found to substantiate the claims, leaving the mystery to remain clouded in uncertainty. The U.S. Navy's official stance on the Philadelphia experiment has always been one of outright denial. According to the Navy, the USS Eldridge was in Philadelphia for routine maintenance, and no unusual events occurred during its time there. However, the absence of concrete records and the secrecy surrounding the project have only fueled suspicions. If the Philadelphia experiment was nothing more than a fabrication, why has the government worked so hard to suppress any mention of it? The silence surrounding the event has only served to deepen the enigma and invite speculation about what may have been concealed. As the years passed, many theories were proposed to explain what happened aboard the USS Eldridge. One of the more outlandish theories is that the experiment was an attempt to manipulate space-time itself, possibly leading to teleportation or a tear in the fabric of reality. Some believe that the ship's disappearance was the result of tampering with quantum mechanics, an early experiment in moving objects through space instantly. If true, this theory would suggest that the crew's horrific physical and mental breakdowns were the result of irreversible damage caused by exposure to forces beyond human understanding. Other theories propose more grounded explanations, such as the idea that the disappearance was simply an optical illusion. The powerful electromagnetic fields could have disrupted radar and visual perception, causing observers to lose track of the ship's location. While this theory might account for the ship's apparent invisibility, it doesn't explain the many reports of crew members being fused with the ship or suffering mental disintegration. It's the eerie consequences of the experiment, far beyond just the ship's vanishing, that remain impossible to fully explain. Still, other theories suggest that the Philadelphia experiment was part of a broader series of military experiments, perhaps involving more than just radar technology. Some believe the experiment was not just a test for invisibility, but also for psychological manipulation or mind control. Given the secretive nature of wartime research and the military's interest in advanced technologies, it's possible that the U.S. Navy was testing mind-altering or psychic warfare techniques. The strange aftermath of the event, with crew members suffering from severe psychological trauma, could fit within this speculative framework. Despite the numerous theories, no definitive evidence has ever surfaced to explain what happened during the Philadelphia experiment. While the official records deny the event ever took place, the consistent reports from witnesses, along with the strange circumstances of the disappearance, continue to fuel the legend. Over the decades, the story has inspired books, documentaries, and even Hollywood films, all adding to the intrigue and mystery that surrounds the Philadelphia experiment. The waters off the coast of Vancouver Island are treacherous and unpredictable, their depths concealing both beauty and danger in equal measure. On a clear day, the sea is a brilliant blue, its surface calm and inviting. But when the fog rolls in, as it often does in the cold, damp mornings of winter, the waters become treacherous, shrouded in an eerie veil of mist. It was into these very waters that the SS Valencia, a passenger steamship, sailed on its fateful journey in January of 1906. The ship, bound for Seattle from San Francisco, was no stranger to the volatile conditions of the Pacific. It was built for oceanic travel, a sturdy vessel that had crossed many miles of ocean without incident. Yet, as the Valencia made its way north, the crew and passengers found themselves at the mercy of a storm unlike any they had faced before. The storm, which intensified as they approached the jagged coastline of Vancouver Island, would prove to be their undoing. On January 22, 1906, the Valencia was caught in the heart of this storm. The ship, battered by fierce winds and high waves, began to veer dangerously off course, pushed off its intended path by the furious weather. Navigating through the waters near the Strait of Juan de Fuca, the ship became trapped in the churning sea, unable to find shelter. Visibility was nearly non-existent, and the storm's fury made it impossible to steer or communicate. It was a catastrophe waiting to happen. The Valencia was not a small vessel. It had been designed to carry hundreds of passengers, and on that ill-fated journey, it was filled with men, women, and children, many of whom were travelers seeking the promise of safety and warmth in the temperate climates of the Pacific Northwest. But as the storm worsened, the ship's fate became sealed. The Valencia struck rocks hidden beneath the surface of the water, and the ship began to break apart. What happened next is shrouded in confusion and horror. The Valencia was unable to send a distress signal, its radio equipment disabled by the storm. As the ship began to sink, the crew and passengers faced a terrifying and uncertain fate. The lifeboats, crucial for survival, were launched into the turbulent sea, but many were either capsized by the waves or launched incorrectly, leaving survivors stranded on the ship's sinking wreck. In the days that followed, those who managed to survive the initial disaster would find themselves adrift in the freezing waters of the Pacific, helpless against the elements. The aftermath of the disaster is as tragic as it is puzzling. Of the 108 people aboard the ship, only 37 survived. The rescue effort that followed was marked by incredible confusion. Search parties combed the coastline for days, but the bodies of many of the passengers and crew were never recovered. Over time, the Valencia disaster became known not only for its staggering loss of life, but also for the strange circumstances surrounding the wreck and the aftermath. What makes the Valencia disaster so haunting is not just the scale of the tragedy, but the eerie details that have surrounded the event since its occurrence. It wasn't just the storm that claimed the ship, but the strange set of circumstances that seemed to conspire against those who tried to survive. In the days following the wreck, as searchers combed the area for survivors, they began to encounter inexplicable occurrences. Several lifeboats were found abandoned on the shore, yet there was no sign of the people who had been in them. Some of the lifeboats appeared to have been deliberately abandoned, while others were found to have drifted far from the shipwreck site, their occupants apparently vanishing into the night without a trace. Could they have been swept away by the storm, or was there something more at play? Even more unsettling were the reports from the rescue teams. Some claimed to have seen strange, ghostly figures on the shore, figures that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Were these survivors of the Valencia who had somehow managed to reach land, only to disappear again? Or were they the souls of those lost in the disaster, doomed to wander the shores forever? The disappearance of survivors in the aftermath of the disaster has led to many theories, none of which are fully explained. Some suggest that the survivors were victims of hypothermia or exhaustion, and in their delirium wandered off into the storm or the dense coastal fog, never to be seen again. Others point to the isolation of the area, where many of the survivors might have succumbed to the elements without any hope of rescue. Yet, even today, despite countless efforts, no concrete evidence has surfaced to explain the mysterious disappearances. Theories about the Valencia disaster range from the plausible to the speculative. Some historians suggest that the storm itself may have been a once-in-a-lifetime event, a tempest of such ferocity that it defied the ship's design and preparations, overwhelming the Valencia and its crew. Others propose that navigational errors played a key role in the disaster. The ship's captain, as well as the crew, may have misjudged the severity of the storm or been unfamiliar with the dangerous waters of Vancouver Island. But why, then, were so many of the lifeboats abandoned in such strange circumstances? And why did the survivors who managed to reach land vanish so mysteriously? Another theory suggests the possibility of sabotage, or some deliberate action that might have caused the ship's destruction. Some claim that the Valencia was carrying valuable cargo, and that its wreck may have been caused by a deliberate act, perhaps an attack or even a setup designed to destroy the ship. While there's little evidence to support this theory, the disappearance of so many survivors continues to raise unsettling questions. Could there have been something hidden within the Valencia's manifest that made it a target for something far darker than nature itself? As with many maritime disasters, the true cause of the Valencia wreck remains a mixture of documented fact, speculation, and intrigue. The ship's sinking, so long ago, still haunts the minds of those who study it, especially those who live in the coastal areas near where it met its end. For the survivors who lived to tell the story, and for the families of those who perished, the unanswered questions linger, their echoes still heard in the crashing of waves against the shore. Why did so many of the survivors disappear? Were they victims of fate, the storm's cruel grip? Or is there something more? Something that has never been fully explained? What is it about the Valencia that continues to haunt those who know its story? The Valencia disaster stands as a stark reminder of the unpredictable and perilous nature of the sea, a mystery that, even over a century later, remains unsolved. With every new discovery and every theory that emerges, the question lingers. Was it simply nature's wrath, or is there something hidden beneath the surface of this disaster, something we have yet to uncover? The ocean, like history itself, holds many secrets. And in the case of the SS Valencia, some of those secrets may never be revealed. The waters surrounding Vancouver Island are infamous for their unpredictable nature. On clear days, they gleam with a tranquil blue, inviting travelers to explore their depths. But in the depths of winter, the fog rolls in, covering the waters in an eerie mist that conceals both beauty and danger in equal measure. It was into these treacherous waters that the SS Valencia, a sturdy passenger steamship, sailed on a fateful journey from San Francisco to Seattle in January of 1906. This journey, meant to be a routine passage, would soon turn into one of the most tragic and mysterious maritime disasters in history. The Valencia, built to endure the rough conditions of the Pacific Ocean, was no stranger to the storms and violent weather that frequently swept the region. But on this occasion, the crew and passengers found themselves caught in a tempest far more powerful than any they had encountered before. As they neared the jagged coastline of Vancouver Island, the storm intensified, pushing the ship off course and into the wild seas near the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Navigating through these dangerous waters, the ship soon found itself trapped, unable to escape the relentless winds and towering waves. Visibility was almost zero, and the storm's ferocity made it impossible to communicate or steer the vessel safely. A catastrophe was unfolding. The Valencia was no small ship. It had been designed to carry hundreds of passengers. On that ill-fated journey, the vessel was filled with families, travelers, and workers, all seeking the warmth of the Pacific Northwest. But as the storm raged, the fate of the passengers became sealed. The ship struck submerged rocks hidden beneath the violent surface of the ocean. The collision tore the vessel apart, and the once sturdy ship began to sink. The crew and passengers, caught in the chaos, were left to face the brutal consequences of their misfortune. What followed was a tragic sequence of events. The Valencia was unable to send out a distress signal. The storm had knocked out the ship's radio equipment. As the vessel sank, the crew and passengers scrambled to launch the lifeboats. In the wild conditions, many lifeboats were either capsized by the waves or launched incorrectly, leaving survivors stranded aboard the sinking wreck. Those who did manage to escape the ship found themselves adrift in the freezing Pacific waters, at the mercy of nature. The following days were filled with terror, as the survivors struggled to stay alive in the icy waters, unable to find shelter or safety. In the aftermath of the disaster, the rescue efforts were fraught with confusion. Of the 108 people aboard the ship, only 37 survived. The search teams that combed the coastline found abandoned lifeboats, some far from the wreck site, but the bodies of many passengers and crew members were never recovered. The circumstances of the wreck, combined with the eerie details that followed, made the Valencia disaster a haunting chapter in maritime history. The strange events surrounding the wreck gave rise to suspicions that something far darker was at play. After the storm, as rescuers scoured the coastline for survivors, they began encountering unsettling occurrences. Several lifeboats were found abandoned, but without any sign of the people who had been aboard. Some lifeboats seemed deliberately left behind, while others had drifted far away from the wreck. It was as if the survivors had disappeared into the night, swept away by the storm, or perhaps something more mysterious. The fact that these lifeboats were empty, with no trace of the occupants, led to wild speculations. Had they drowned, been swept out to sea, or did something far stranger happen? What made the situation even more disturbing were reports from the rescue teams who claimed to have seen strange, ghostly figures on the shore. These figures would appear suddenly and vanish just as quickly, leaving those who witnessed them wondering if they had seen survivors of the Valencia, or if they were the spirits of those who had perished in the disaster, condemned to wander the coastline forever. The idea that the dead were somehow unable to rest only added to the growing sense of mystery surrounding the disaster. The mysterious disappearances of the survivors left many unanswered questions. Some theorized that the survivors had succumbed to hypothermia or exhaustion, wandering off into the storm or thick coastal fog, lost to the elements. Others suggested that the survivors, once ashore, had been so disoriented by the trauma of the event that they lost their bearings, never to be seen again. Despite efforts over the years, no concrete evidence has ever surfaced to explain why so many people seemingly vanished without a trace. Theories about the cause of the disaster range from the plausible to the speculative. Some historians believe that the storm was a once-in-a-lifetime event, a natural force so powerful that it overwhelmed the ship and its crew, making the disaster inevitable. Others suggest that navigational errors might have contributed to the wreck. The ship's captain and crew might have misjudged the severity of the storm or been unfamiliar with the dangerous waters of Vancouver Island. But even this does not explain the strange abandonment of so many lifeboats, nor the inexplicable disappearances of the survivors. What was happening that couldn't be explained by a simple storm? A more speculative theory suggests that the wreck might have been caused by sabotage, with the ship's destruction being part of a deliberate act. Some argue that the Valencia was carrying valuable cargo, and that the storm was not just a natural event, but perhaps a setup to destroy the ship. While there's little evidence to support this idea, the mystery of the survivors' disappearance and the strange circumstances surrounding the wreck have left many wondering if there was something hidden within the ship's manifest that could explain why it was targeted. As with many maritime disasters, the true cause of the wreck remains a combination of fact, speculation, and intrigue. The wreck of the Valencia is still remembered today, especially by those who live in the coastal regions where the tragedy occurred. For those who survived to tell the story and for the families of the victims, the questions surrounding the wreck continue to haunt them. Why did so many survivors disappear? Was it the force of nature or something more ominous that led to their fates? The dense forests of the Teutoburg forest in present-day Germany are a far cry from the bustling streets of ancient Rome, but these silent woods bear the weight of a long-forgotten mystery, one that still echoes through history. This is where, in 9 CE, a military disaster of such magnitude occurred that it not only reshaped the Roman Empire's ambitions, but also set the stage for one of the most enduring legends in military history. Here, among the ancient trees and tangled undergrowth, the lost legion vanished, and with it, an entire chapter of the Roman Empire's conquest and strategy seemed to slip into the darkness of time. The story begins, as many do, with the relentless ambitions of Rome. The empire, under the rule of Augustus, sought to expand its influence eastward, into the wild, untamed lands of Germania. The Romans were no strangers to war, having conquered vast swaths of the known world. But the dense forests and unforgiving terrain of Germania were something entirely different, an enemy both intractable and unpredictable. Yet they pressed on. The Roman general, Publius Quinctilius Varus, was entrusted with the task of bringing the rebellious Germanic tribes under Roman control. His forces, composed of 3 legions, were highly disciplined, experienced, and well-equipped, as were the usual Roman armies that had conquered and subjugated vast territories. With them, Varus brought the might of Roman organization and military strategy. The legions, numbered in the thousands, were a formidable force in the eyes of the Roman Empire. But what awaited them in the depths of the Teutoburg forest was something far beyond even the most prepared soldier's worst fears. It was there, in the dense, mist-covered woods, that Varus's legions were ambushed by a coalition of Germanic tribes led by the chieftain Arminius. Arminius, a former Roman ally who had been trained in the ways of the Roman military, used his deep knowledge of Roman tactics to orchestrate one of the most devastating ambushes in military history. The forest, with its maze-like paths and thick fog, provided the perfect cover. The Romans, used to open battlefields and well-organized campaigns, found themselves in an environment that was both foreign and lethal. The battle was brutal. The Romans were surrounded on all sides by warriors who knew the terrain, who understood how to fight in the dense underbrush and shadowy darkness. The legions were trapped. Their formation, once so formidable on open ground, quickly dissolved into chaos. Some soldiers fought desperately, others tried to flee, but the dense forest and relentless Germanic warriors made escape impossible. Within 3 days, the Roman forces had been destroyed, and the lost legion, the remnants of what was once a proud and disciplined fighting force, was scattered across the forest, its members slaughtered or taken captive. The exact number of casualties remains unknown, but estimates suggest that upwards of 20,000 soldiers perished that day. The disaster was so complete that Varus, in despair over the loss of his legions, is said to have taken his own life. News of the defeat shocked Rome to its core, and Augustus himself was reportedly heard crying out, "Varus, give me back my legions." The lost legion became a symbol of Roman vulnerability, and Germania was effectively closed off to Roman expansion for centuries to come. But what happened to the legion's soldiers after the battle? This question is where the mystery truly begins. The remains of the Roman soldiers, their weapons and armor, were scattered across the forest floor. Yet, as time passed, no definitive archaeological evidence emerged to confirm the fate of the lost legion. Many historians believe that the Germanic tribes, in their victory, desecrated the corpses, removing the Romans from the landscape both literally and symbolically. But the question remains, did the legion's soldiers simply perish, Or did something far stranger happen that day in the Teutoburg forest? Over the centuries, the location of the battle itself was lost to time. The forest, overgrown and constantly changing, hid the evidence of the carnage that took place there. Even as scholars and archaeologists pored over ancient texts and searched for clues, the exact location of the battle was elusive. In the 19th century, however, a series of excavations began to uncover remnants of the battle. Weapons, Roman coins, and other artifacts were found, offering tantalizing glimpses into the past. But, perplexingly, there was still no clear sign of the legion's soldiers. No mass grave, no definitive resting place, just fragments of history scattered throughout the forest, like pieces of a puzzle that would never quite fit together. The mystery deepened with the stories that began to emerge around the Lost Legion in later centuries. Over time, reports began to surface of strange sightings in the Teutoburg forest, of ghostly figures in Roman armor, soldiers marching through the fog, their faces frozen in the terror of their final moments. Could it be that the spirits of the Lost Legion still linger in the forest, unable to rest until their story is fully told? Some even speculate that the Roman soldiers, or their descendants, were somehow absorbed into the local Germanic tribes, their identities lost to history, and their fates sealed in ways no one could have predicted. As more recent excavations have revealed more evidence of the Lost Legion, some have suggested that the Roman soldiers may have been taken prisoner rather than killed outright. Could they have been kept alive, forced to live among the tribes they had once sought to conquer? Could some of them have escaped, blending into the population and becoming part of the Germanic tribes that later rose to challenge Rome? The possibility of Roman soldiers integrating with the tribes they fought against adds yet another layer to the mystery, leaving us to question just how much of the Lost Legion's story remains untold. And then there are the more speculative theories, stories that stretch the boundaries of known history. Could the Lost Legion have simply vanished, taken by forces that we cannot comprehend? Some have suggested that the legions might have been the victims of a mystical event, or even a time-traveling anomaly that pulled them from history. These ideas, while intriguing, seem to veer into the realm of legend. Yet, they tap into a deeper desire to understand the forces that shaped history, and the unknown elements that might still lie hidden beneath the surface of the past. One of the most compelling, and perhaps most unsettling aspects of the mystery is the complete absence of the Lost Legion in the historical record following their disappearance. Unlike many other Roman defeats, where the aftermath is documented with grim precision, the fate of the Lost Legion seems to have been purposefully erased, as if the empire sought to bury this particular tragedy. Was this a deliberate act by Rome to preserve its image as an invincible force? Or is there something else at play, something that has not yet come to light? Could the answers to these questions lie buried in the earth, hidden beneath the roots of ancient trees, or scattered across forgotten corners of the forest? Or is the truth of what happened to the Lost Legion of Germania a mystery that will forever remain locked in the shadows of history? As we ponder these questions, one thing becomes clear. The Lost Legion was not just a military defeat. It was a turning point in Roman history, one that leaves us with as many questions as answers. What happened to those soldiers who disappeared into the mists of time? Were they simply lost to history, or did they vanish in a way that defies explanation? Only the forest knows, and perhaps, with time, it will reveal the truth, if we are willing to listen. The dense, mist-covered woods of the Teutoburg forest in modern-day Germany hide a mystery that has lingered for centuries, one that continues to captivate historians, archaeologists, and curious minds alike. This is where, in 9 CE, a military catastrophe occurred that would reshape the Roman Empire's ambitions and contribute to one of the most enduring legends in military history, the story of the Lost Legion. The tale begins in the heart of Augustus's Roman Empire, a vast power determined to expand its reach further eastward into the wild and untamed lands of Germania. Though Rome had successfully conquered vast territories across Europe, the dense forests and rugged terrain of Germania posed a unique and unfamiliar challenge. Yet, Rome's ambitions were unstoppable, and the conquest of Germania was seen as the next logical step in their expansion. To lead this effort, Publius Quinctilius Varus, a Roman general, was appointed to bring the Germanic tribes under Roman control. Varus, an experienced military leader, commanded 3 Roman legions, well-trained, disciplined, and equipped to handle any challenge. The force, numbering in the thousands, set off into the depths of Germania with a sense of confidence. But what awaited them in the Teutoburg forest was a far different enemy, an enemy that knew the terrain, the forest, and the brutal tactics needed to win. The mystery deepened with the stories that began to emerge around the Lost Legion in later centuries. Over time, reports began to surface of strange sightings in the Teutoburg forest, of ghostly figures in Roman armor, soldiers marching through the fog, their faces frozen in the terror of their final moments. Could it be that the spirits of the Lost Legion still linger in the forest, unable to rest until their story is fully told? Some even speculate that the Roman soldiers, or their descendants, were somehow absorbed into the local Germanic tribes, their identities lost to history, and their fates sealed in ways no one could have predicted. As more recent excavations have revealed more evidence of the Lost Legion, some have suggested that the Roman soldiers may have been taken prisoner rather than killed outright. Could they have been kept alive, forced to live among the tribes they had once sought to conquer? Could some of them have escaped, blending into the population and becoming part of the Germanic tribes that later rose to challenge Rome? The possibility of Roman soldiers integrating with the tribes they fought against adds yet another layer to the mystery, leaving us to question just how much of the Lost Legion's story remains untold. And then there are the more speculative theories, stories that stretch the boundaries of known history. Could the Lost Legion have simply vanished, taken by forces that we cannot comprehend? Some have suggested that the legions might have been the victims of a mystical event, or even a time-traveling anomaly that pulled them from history. These ideas, while intriguing, seem to veer into the realm of legend. Yet, they tap into a deeper desire to understand the forces that shaped history, and the unknown elements that might still lie hidden beneath the surface of the past. One of the most compelling, and perhaps most unsettling aspects of the mystery is the complete absence of the Lost Legion in the historical record following their disappearance. Unlike many other Roman defeats, where the aftermath is documented with grim precision, the fate of the Lost Legion seems to have been purposefully erased, as if the empire sought to bury this particular tragedy. Was this a deliberate act by Rome to preserve its image as an invincible force? Or is there something else at play, something that has not yet come to light? Could the answers to these questions lie buried in the earth, hidden beneath the roots of ancient trees, or scattered across forgotten corners of the forest? Or is the truth of what happened to the Lost Legion of Germania a mystery that will forever remain locked in the shadows of history? As we ponder these questions, one thing becomes clear. The Lost Legion was not just a military defeat. It was a turning point in Roman history, one that leaves us with as many questions as answers. What happened to those soldiers who disappeared into the mists of time? Were they simply lost to history, or did they vanish in a way that defies explanation? Only the forest knows, and perhaps, with time, it will reveal the truth, if we are willing to listen. The dense, mist-covered woods of the Teutoburg forest in modern-day Germany hide a mystery that has lingered for centuries, one that continues to captivate historians, archaeologists, and curious minds alike. This is where, in 9 CE, a military catastrophe occurred that would reshape the Roman Empire's ambitions and contribute to one of the most enduring legends in military history, the story of the Lost Legion. The tale begins in the heart of Augustus's Roman Empire, a vast power determined to expand its reach further eastward into the wild and untamed lands of Germania. Though Rome had successfully conquered vast territories across Europe, the dense forests and rugged terrain of Germania posed a unique and unfamiliar challenge. Yet, Rome's ambitions were unstoppable, and the conquest of Germania was seen as the next logical step in their expansion. To lead this effort, Publius Quinctilius Varus, a Roman general, was appointed to bring the Germanic tribes under Roman control. Varus, an experienced military leader, commanded 3 Roman legions, well-trained, disciplined, and equipped to handle any challenge. The force, numbering in the thousands, set off into the depths of Germania with a sense of confidence. But what awaited them in the Teutoburg forest was a far different enemy, an enemy that knew the terrain, the forest, and the brutal tactics needed to win. The fog of London's East End is thick that night, curling in tendrils around the gas-lit streets, swallowing up the narrow alleys and the old tenements like a hungry predator. It is here, in the grimy, overcrowded district of Whitechapel, that the story of one of the most notorious and perplexing mysteries in criminal history begins to unfold. The year is 1888, and the city, already rife with poverty and crime, is about to be thrust into a nightmare that would haunt it for decades. The shadow of Jack the Ripper, whose true identity would remain a mystery for over a century, begins to stretch across London's streets, leaving behind a legacy of terror, confusion, and unrelenting speculation. But what is it that makes the Ripper case so chilling? And why, after all these years, does it continue to captivate the public's imagination? To understand this, we must first step into the darkened streets of Whitechapel on the fateful night when the terror began. On the morning of August 31st, 1888, the body of Mary Ann Nichols was found in Buck's Row, a quiet street tucked away from the main thoroughfares. Her throat had been slashed so deeply that she nearly lost her head, and her abdomen had been grotesquely mutilated. At first glance, it seemed like yet another brutal crime, one that might have been swept under the rug in a city already plagued by violence. But this was no ordinary murder. The precise, calculated nature of the injuries suggested a mind capable of far more than mere violence. It was as though the killer knew exactly what he was doing, and he had done it before. The police arrived quickly, but despite their best efforts, they could make little sense of what had happened. The body, so carefully arranged in its final resting place, told a story that no one could decipher. And when, just days later, the body of another woman, Annie Chapman, was discovered under similarly horrific circumstances, the city's fear began to mount. The police had a serial killer on their hands, and the press quickly dubbed him Jack the Ripper. The brutality of these crimes was undeniable, but it was not just the killings themselves that made them so disturbing. It was the mystery surrounding them. Who was this man? Why had he chosen these women as his victims? And perhaps most chillingly of all, why had he not been caught? In a time when police detectives were already starting to develop modern investigative methods, how could such a killer remain hidden for so long? As the murders continued, the public's fear grew, and so did the list of potential suspects. Some of the most prominent theories were grounded in the facts available at the time. The police quickly focused their attention on a number of individuals who were known to have a connection to the Whitechapel area. The first name to emerge was that of Montague John Druitt, a barrister who had been found dead in the Thames River just weeks after the last known murder. His family history was marked by tragedy. His mother had been institutionalized for mental illness, and Druitt himself had shown signs of instability. The timing of his death, so close to the final murder, made him a natural suspect. However, there was no direct evidence linking him to the crimes, and modern investigations have largely dismissed him as the killer. Another theory that gained traction was that the killer was someone with a medical background. The precise nature of the mutilations, especially the removal of organs, suggested a knowledge of anatomy, leading some to speculate that Jack the Ripper could have been a surgeon or a doctor. At the time, London had a thriving medical community, and it was not uncommon for medical students or even physicians to live in the less affluent areas of the city, like Whitechapel. One prominent suspect who fit this description was Dr. Francis Tumblety, an American quack doctor who was known to have fled the country shortly after the killings. Tumblety had a reputation for misogyny and had been arrested in London for indecency, though he was never formally charged with the murders. But what if the truth behind the Ripper's identity was even more elusive? What if the killer was not a physician or an obvious figure from the fringes of society, but rather someone who blended in with the normal bustle of Whitechapel's streets? Could it have been a figure of higher social standing? Someone who could seamlessly move through London's social circles while carrying out these grisly deeds under the cover of darkness? Theories that tie the murders to London's elite have been a subject of fascination and intrigue, fueled by the belief that the Ripper was not just a murderer, but a man with access to power. Some speculated that the killings were connected to a much larger conspiracy, one that involved powerful figures in politics or society. One of the more outlandish theories links the murders to the British royal family, suggesting that Jack the Ripper might have been involved in a scandal surrounding Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence. Proponents of this theory argue that the prince's secret relationship with a lower-class woman and the subsequent cover-up could have led to the brutal killings. However, there is no concrete evidence to support these claims, and the theory remains a fringe belief. But while all of these theories are compelling, they fail to answer one fundamental question. Why? What motivated this killer to target these particular women? And why did he stop after a series of brutal public killings that sent shockwaves throughout London? Was there a psychological motivation? Some suggest that the Ripper was driven by a deep-seated hatred for women, which manifested in his need to dehumanize and brutalize his victims. Others point to a more complex set of motivations, including a desire for power, control, or even a twisted sense of religious justification. Perhaps the most puzzling aspect of the Jack the Ripper case is not only the lack of conclusive evidence, but also the killer's ability to evade capture despite the best efforts of the police. Investigations into the murders were fraught with missteps, confusion, and false leads. The lack of forensic technology, like DNA analysis or even the ability to conduct a detailed autopsy, meant that the authorities were often left chasing shadows. Furthermore, the police received a staggering number of false confessions from people seeking fame or notoriety, which further muddied the investigation. The press, too, fanned the flames of public hysteria, with sensational headlines only increasing the confusion. As time passed, the investigation ground to a halt. The killings stopped as suddenly as they had begun, and the case eventually grew cold. Yet, the mystery of Jack the Ripper endures. Who was he? Was he a madman, a doctor, or a member of the aristocracy? And why, after all these years, does his identity continue to elude us? Theories abound, but the truth remains hidden beneath layers of time, speculation, and legend. Each new theory offers a glimmer of hope for solving the mystery, yet the answers slip further away with each passing decade. The case of Jack the Ripper is more than just an unsolved crime. It is a symbol of something far deeper and more unsettling about the nature of evil. It is a reminder of the dark secrets that can lie beneath the surface of even the most familiar places, and of the lengths to which the human mind can go to evade discovery. And so, the question remains: what or who was Jack the Ripper? The killer's identity may never be fully known, but the mystery will continue to captivate, disturb, and haunt those who seek to uncover the truth. As the fog rolls in and the streets of Whitechapel fall silent once more, we are left to wonder, could the true identity of Jack the Ripper still be out there, hidden somewhere in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered?